Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks and come on down to the time machine to go back in time to 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons for this Robert Reads.
Hello, and welcome to Robert Reads. We are reading today 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. That's right. I have heard a lot about it. Mostly bad things, to be honest. People usually rag on this edition. But I want to make my own mind up about it. So I've been very generously sent an edition of the Player's Handbook for 4th edition by one of my dear friends and fans, ClassicSamNYGM. Thank you very much, Classic Sam. And we're going to read it today. So obviously we're not going to get through the whole thing. It is 317 pages long. But this is the first time I will have ever opened the Player's Handbook myself. Let's crack into it. So the contents, the chapters are how to play, making characters, character races, character classes, skills, feats, equipment, adventuring, combat. Ooh, combat is a long chapter. Combat goes from 264 to 296, so it's about 30 some. Oh, it's not that long then, because it just is. There's a lot of things on each page, it seems, that have been broken down on the contents. And then the last chapter is rituals, and then just the credits and index and character sheets. Cool. Let's jump in. How to play, Chapter 1. Imagine a world of bold warriors, mighty wizards, and terrible monsters. Imagine a world of ancient ruins, vast caverns, and great wild wastes where only the bravest heroes dare to tread. Imagine a world of swords and magic, a world of elves and goblins, a world of giants and dragons. This is the world of Dungeons & Dragons, role-playing game, also referred to as D&D. The pinnacle of fantasy role-playing games. You take on the role of a legendary hero, a skilled fighter, a courageous cleric, a deadly rogue, or a spell-hurling wizard. With some willing friends and a little imagination, you strike out on daring missions and epic quests, testing yourself against an array of daunting challenges and bloodthirsty monsters. Get ready! The Player's Handbook contains everything you need to create a heroic character of your own. To start you on your first adventure, this chapter discusses the following topics. A role-playing game. How the D&D game is different from any other game you've played. What's in a D&D game? The essential ingredients of a Dungeons & Dragons game. How do you play? A look at what happens during the game, including a brief example of activity at the game table. And the core mechanic, a single fundamental rule you need to know for most challenges you face in the game. And there's some very nice artwork. I have heard a lot that 4th edition had some really nice artwork. And I'm seeing that so far. I should also mention that I'm sick at the moment and fighting off a cold, so if I sound a bit in my head, that's probably why. Hopefully it gives me a sexy cold voice and not a disgusting to listen to voice. A role-playing game. The Dungeons & Dragons game is a role-playing game. In fact, D&D invented the role-playing game and started an industry. Ooh, okay. Interesting call. A role-playing game is a storytelling game that has elements of the games of make-believe that many of us played as children. However, a role-playing game such as D&D provides form and structure with robust gameplay and endless possibilities. D&D is a fantasy adventure game. You create a character, team up with other characters, your friends, explore a world, and battle monsters. While the D&D game uses dice and miniatures, the action takes place in your imagination. There you have the freedom to create anything you can imagine, with an unlimited special effects budget and the technology to make anything happen. What makes the D&D game unique is the Dungeon Master. The DM is a person who takes on the role of lead storyteller and game referee. The DM creates adventures for the characters and narrates the actions for the players. The DM makes D&D infinitely flexible. He or she can react to any situation. Any twist, any turn suggested by the players to make a D&D adventure vibrant, exciting, and unexpected. The adventure is the heart of the D&D game. It's like a fantasy movie or novel, except the characters that you and your friends create are the stars of the story. The DM sets the scene, but no one knows what's going to happen until the characters do something, and then anything can happen. You might explore a dark dungeon, a ruined city, a lost temple deep in a jungle, or a lava-filled cavern beneath a mysterious mountain. You solve puzzles, talk with other characters, battle all kinds of fantastic monsters, and discover fabulous magic items and treasure. D&D is a cooperative game, in which you and your friends work together to complete each adventure and have fun. It's a storytelling game where the only limit is your imagination. It's a fantasy adventure game. Jesus, we get it. I'm like five paragraphs in, it's like, it's this, it's that, it's the... Yeah, we know. This is the 4th edition of it. It's been around since the 80s. It's a storytelling game where the only limit is your imagination. It's a fantasy adventure game building on the traditions of the greatest fantasy stories of all time. In an adventure, you can attempt anything you can think of. Want to talk to the dragon instead of fighting it? Want to disguise yourself as an orc and sneak into the foul lair? Go ahead and give it a try. Your actions might work, or they might fail spectacularly, but either way, you've contributed to the unfolding story of the adventure and probably had fun along the way. You win, in inverted commas, the Dungeons & Dragons game by participating in an exciting story of bold adventures and confronting deadly perils. The game has no real end. When you finish one story or quest, you can start another one. Many people who play the D&D game keep their games going for months or years, meeting with their friends every week to pick up the story where they left off. Your character grows as the game continues. Each monster defeated, each adventure completed, and each treasure recovered not only adds to your continuing story, but also earns your character new abilities. This increase in power is reflected by your character's level. As you continue to play, your character gains more experience, rising in level and mastering new and more powerful abilities. From time to time, your character might come to a grisly end, torn apart by ferocious monsters, or done in by a nefarious villain. But even when your character is defeated, you don't lose. Your companions can employ powerful magic to revive your character, or you might choose to create a new character to carry on where the previous one fell. You might fail to complete the adventure, but if you had a good time and you created a story that everyone remembers for a long time, the whole group wins. That's a message I can get behind. I'm Robert Hartley and I endorse this message. The real treasure is the friends we made along the way. Yeah. Sorry, I missed all of that. What is D&D? This is how many pages of prologue? Just the one. I still remember one of my first kills. Nice. But you can win D&D. A fantastic world. The world of Dungeons & Dragons game is a place of magic and monsters, of brave warriors and spectacular adventures. It begins with a basis of medieval fantasy, and then adds the creatures, places, and powers that make the D&D world unique. The world of the D&D game is ancient, built upon and beneath the ruins of past empires, leaving the landscape dotted with places of adventure and mystery. Legends and artifacts of past empires still survive, as do terrible menaces. The current age has no all-encompassing empire. The world is shrouded in a dark age between the collapse of the last great empire and the rise of the next, which might be centuries away. Minor kingdoms prosper, to be sure, baronies, holdings, city-states, but each settlement appears as a point of light in the widespread darkness, a haven, an island of civilization in the wilderness that covers the world. Adventurers can rest and recuperate in settlements between adventures. No settlement is entirely safe, however, and adventures break out within and under such places as often as not. Interesting that it's sort of putting those rules onto your settings. Like, the different settings might be completely differently, but they're saying D&D is this. They're setting it as being like, your setting can be whatever you want it to be, as long as it is no all-encompassing empire and like settlements are dots of light in the wilderness. And the wilderness is the majority of things. And there is some old setting of some ancient civilizations that have left ruins behind that you can explore and things. Interesting to try and put that rule onto what your settings should be in the game. West Marches style, yeah. Cities are home bases and adventurers out there, yeah. I feel like 4E is really prescriptive, which is why people didn't like it. Maybe, yeah. It does feel a little prescriptive of a setting at the moment, just within the first couple of pages. During your adventures, you might visit a number of fantastic locations, wide cavern passages cut by rivers of lava, towers held aloft in the sky by ancient magic, forests of strange twisted trees with shimmering fog in the air. Anything you can imagine, your character might experience as the game unfolds. Monsters and supernatural creatures are a part of this world. They prowl in the dark places between the points of light. Some are threats, others are willing to aid you, and many fall into both camps and might react differently depending on how you approach them. Magic is everywhere. People believe in and accept the power that magic provides. However, true masters of magic are rare. Many people have access to a little magic, such minor magic helps those living within the points of light to maintain their communities. But those who have the power to shape spells the way a blacksmith shapes metal are as rare as adventurers, and appear as friends or foes to you and your companions. This is very prescriptive kind of talking about all of this, like magic is everywhere. That's a fact of the D&D setting. Monsters and supernatural creatures are a part of the world. That's a fact of the setting. And if you wanted to run a low magic campaign, you'd be going against the Dungeons & Dragons setting as far as they've written it here. At some point, all adventurers rely on magic in one form or another. Wizards and warlocks draw magic from the fabric of the universe, shape it with their will, and hurl it at their foes in explosive blasts. Clerics and paladins call down the wrath of their gods and sear their foes with divine radiance, or they invoke their god's mercy to heal their allies' wounds. Fighters, rangers, rogues, and warlords, that's a new class, don't obviously use magical powers, but their expertise with their magical weapons makes them masters of the battlefield. At the highest levels of play, even non-magical adventurers perform deeds no mere mortal could dream of doing without magic, swinging great axes in wide swaths that shake the earth around them, or cloaking themselves in shadow to become invisible. Sidebar. Excuse me. Sidebar. The history of D&D. Before role-playing games, before computer games, before trading card games, there were war games. Using metal miniatures to recreate famous battles from history, wargamers were the original hobby gamers. In 1971, Gary Gygax created Chainmail, a set of rules that added fantastic creatures and magic into the traditional wargame. In 1972, Dave Arneson approached Gary Gygax with a new take. Instead of controlling a massive army, each player would play as a single character, a hero. Instead of fighting each other, the heroes would cooperate to defeat the villains and gain rewards. This combination of rules, miniatures, and imagination created a totally new entertainment experience. And in 1974, Gygax and Arneson published the first set of role-playing game rules with TSR Incorporated, the Dungeons & Dragons game. In 1977, the rules were rewritten and repackaged into the Dungeons & Dragons basic set, and suddenly, D&D was on its way to becoming a phenomenon. A year later, the first edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was published in a series of high-quality hardcover books. Throughout the 80s, the game experienced remarkable growth. Novels, cartoon series, computer games, and first campaign settings, Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance, were released. And in 1989, the long-awaited second edition of AD&D took the world by storm, the same year that incredible dungeon master to come, Robert Hartley GM, was born. That's weird that includes that in 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons before I got into the game. But yeah, I'm glad. It's very nice that I'm often left out of books and blurbs and write-ups and things, like the Dungeons & Dragons annual that mentioned Viva la Dirt League and didn't mention my name at all. But it's nice of this book to honour the year that I was born. It's very kind. So prophetic, yeah. Is it written in biro? Yeah. The 1990s started out strong with the release of more campaign settings, including Ravenloft, Dark Sun, and Planescape. But as the decade was drawing to a close, the D&D juggernaut was losing steam. In 1997, Wizards of the Coast purchased TSR Incorporated and moved its creative staff to Seattle to begin work on the third edition of the original role-playing game. In 2000, the third edition of D&D was released, and it was hailed as an innovation in game mechanics. In this period, D&D reached new heights of popularity, celebrated its 30th anniversary, and published an amazing collection of rules books, supplements, and adventures. We've seen D&D grow and make its mark on popular culture. It has inspired multiple generations of gamers, writers, computer game designers, filmmakers, and more, with its ability to expand the imagination and inspire creativity. And now we've reached a new milestone. This is the 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons game. It's new, it's exciting, it's bright and shiny, it's going to shit on everything that came before. It builds on what has gone before. Oh, sorry, no, it says it builds on what's gone before. By which they mean it destroys everything that we've set up before and it shits all over it and starts again from fresh. To the point where most people who play the game are going to give up on the game. That's what they mean by it builds on what's gone before. And it firmly establishes D&D for the next decade of play. Whether you were with the game from the beginning or just discovered it today, this new edition is your key to a fantasy world of adventure. And as far as the credits page goes, it says that this was published in... Where's the published date? First printing, June 2008. So it was not 2010, it was 2008. 2008 was just after I moved to New Zealand. So I moved to New Zealand just as 4th edition was in the works. That's interesting. If you rebuild stuff, you need good fertilizer. Yeah. It's the same overconfidence we're seeing today with 1D&D. My group literally stopped playing D&D after a month into 4th edition. Yeah. The decade they thought would last was sure over quick, though. 5e was released in 2014. Yeah. What's in a D&D game? All Dungeons & Dragons games have 4 basic ingredients. At least 1 player, 4 or 5 players is best, a dungeon master, an adventurer, and game books and dice. That last one is not actually needed. You do not need the game books. They obviously have to tell you that you need the game books in the game books so that you purchase more of the game books, but you don't need the game books. You don't even need dice. You can roll dice for free on Google. You could just ask Google, roll a d20, and it does it. So you don't need dice. There's a million different free dice apps that you can get. There's also just like you can put 20 slips of paper into a hat with numbers written on them and you draw them out randomly. You can do it with a deck of cards. You can do it with any random number generator. You could have a chicken in a circle with 20 numbers, and whichever number it pecks at is the number. Like whatever you do to generate a random number, that's enough. You don't need dice. You don't need the books. You just need somebody to tell a story with and a story that you want to tell. Player characters. As a player, you create a character, a heroic adventurer. This adventurer is part of a team that delves into dungeons, battles monsters, and explores the world's dark wilderness. A player-generated character is known as a player character, PC. Like the protagonists of a novel or a movie, player characters are at the centre of a game's action. When you play a D&D character, you put yourself into the character's shoes and make decisions as if you were that character. You decide what door to open next. You decide whether to attack a monster, to negotiate with a villain, or to attempt a dangerous quest. You can make these decisions based on your character's personality, motivations, and goals. You can even speak or act in character if you like. You have almost limitless control of what your character can do and say in the game. The Dungeon Master. One person has a special role in a D&D game, the DM. The DM presents the adventure and the challenges that the players try to overcome. Every D&D game needs a Dungeon Master. You can't play without one. Well, the Dungeon Master has several functions in the game. Adventure Builder. The DM creates adventures or selects pre-made adventures for you and the other players to play through. Narrator. The DM sets the pace of the story and presents the various challenges and encounters that the players must overcome. Monster Controller. The DM controls the monsters and villains that the player characters battle against, choosing their actions and rolling dice for their attacks. And Referee. When it's not clear what ought to happen next, the DM decides how to apply the rules and adjudicate the story. The DM controls the monsters and villains in the adventure, but he isn't your adversary. Good that they say that, just flatly. The DM job is to provide a framework for the whole group to enjoy an exciting adventure. That means challenging the players with interesting encounters and tests, keeping the game moving, and applying the rules fairly. Many D&D players find that being the Dungeon Master is the best part of the game. Taking on a Dungeon Master role isn't necessarily a permanent post. You and your friends... nice try. You and your friends can take turns being the DM from adventure to adventure. If you think you like to be the Dungeon Master in your group, you can find all the tools to help you in the Dungeon Master's Guide. The Adventure! Adventurers need adventures. A Dungeons & Dragons adventure consists of a series of events. When the players decide which way to go next and how their characters meet the resulting encounters and challenges, they turn the adventure into an exciting story about their characters. D&D adventures feature action, combat, mystery, magic, challenges, and lots of monsters. Adventurers come in 3 forms. Ready to play. The DM can buy or obtain professionally written ready-to-play adventures from a number of sources, including www.dndinsider.com. I wonder if that website's still around. D&D Insider. That's where they were officially sending people to find pre-made adventures. Adventure hooks and components. Most D&D supplements offer pieces of adventures, story ideas, maps, interesting villains, monsters that the DM can assemble into an adventure. Dungeon Magazine is also a rich source of adventure material. And homemade. Many DMs choose to create their own Dungeons & Dragons adventures, building challenging encounters and stocking them with monsters from the Monster Manual and treasure from the Player's Handbook. An adventure can be a simple dungeon crawl, a series of rooms filled with monsters and traps, with little story to explain why the adventurers need to explore them, or as complex as a murder mystery or a tale of political intrigue. It can last for a single game session, or stretch out over many sessions of play. For example, exploring a haunted castle might take half a dozen game sessions over the course of a couple of months in real time. When the same group of player characters plays with the same Dungeon Master through multiple adventures, you've got a campaign. The story of the heroes doesn't end with a single adventure, but continues on for as long as you like. It's theoretically possible to rotate DMs, yeah. In theory, anything's possible. D&D Insider? Probably after she had a few kids. Ha ha ha. It redirects you to D&D Beyond now. Yeah, there you go. D&D Insider redirects to D&D Beyond. I figured it might. Alright, game books and dice. The action of the game takes place mostly in your imagination, but you still need a few game pieces to play D&D. You do not. Player's Handbook. Every player needs a Player's Handbook for reference. No, they do not. You need one Player's Handbook between you, and the Dungeon Master could have a free PDF of it. Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual. The Dungeon Master needs a copy of each of these books, and players might enjoy perusing the contents too. You do not. You'd benefit from it, I'm not going to lie. You benefit from getting the Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual, reading them. You don't need them. They're not prerequisites to playing. Dice. The Dungeons & Dragons game requires a special set of game dice. See the sidebar. We'll get to that in a second. And then character sheet. To keep track of all the important information about your character, use the character sheet at the back of this book, or check out www.dndinsider.com. You might find some of the following items and accessories useful at your game table as well. Miniatures. Each player needs a miniature to represent his or her character, and the DM needs miniatures for the monsters. Official D&D miniatures are custom made to be used within the D&D game. Battle grid. Dungeon tiles. Combat in D&D plays out on a grid of 1-inch squares. You can pick up an erasable battle grid at many hobby game stores, or try D&D dungeon tiles, heavy cardstock tiles that can be set up to create a wide variety of locations. Or you can create your own grid. Go back to the sidebar. Sidebar, game dice. The game uses polyhedral dice with different numbers of sides, as shown below. You can find dice like these in any store where you bought this book, or any game store, or any bookstores. I was going to say in any bookstores? That's a hell of a claim that you can buy polyhedral dice at any bookstores. It says many bookstores. In these rules, the different dice are referred to by the letter D, followed by the number of sides it has. D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20. The common 6-sided dice is the D6. When you need to roll dice, the rule tells you how many dice to roll, what size they are, what modifiers to add. For example, 3d8 plus 5 means to roll 3 8-sided dice and add 5 to the total. You can use d10s to roll percentages if you ever need to. Roll 1d10 for the 10s and 1d10 for the 1s to generate a number between 1 and 100. 2 10s is 100, but otherwise a 10 on the 10s die counts as a 0. So a 10 on the 10s, a 10 on the 10s die and a 7 on the 1s die is a result of 7, not 107. Which would be just so much Just so much simpler if they just labelled the D10s correctly. It's a 1-inch tile. Yeah, you can't play on a 1.2-inch tile. No, undoable. We're learning about a game called Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. You mean the Monopoly die, as we've collectively decided to refer to it for reasons? How do you play? Your piece in the Dungeons and Dragons game is your character. He or she is your representative in the game world. Through your character, you can interact with the game world in any way you want. The only limit is your imagination, and sometimes how high you roll on the dice. Basically, the D&D game consists of a group of player characters taking on an adventure presented by the Dungeon Master. Each adventure is made up of encounters, challenges of some sort that your characters face. Encounters come in 2 types: combat encounters and non-combat encounters. Combat encounters are battles against nefarious foes. In a combat encounter, characters and monsters take turns attacking until one side or the other is defeated. It's a bit reductive, but sure. Non-combat encounters include deadly traps, difficult puzzles, and other obstacles to overcome. Sometimes you overcome non-combat encounters by using your character's skills. Sometimes you can defeat them with clever use of magic. Sometimes you have to puzzle them out with nothing but your wits. Non-combat encounters also include social interactions, such as attempts to persuade, bargain with, or obtain information from a non-player character, NPC, controlled by the DM. Whenever you decide that your character wants to talk to a person or monster, it's a non-combat encounter. Exploration. Between encounters, your characters explore the world. You make decisions about which way your character travels, and what he or she tries to do next. Exploration is the give and take of you telling the DM what you want your character to do, and the DM telling you what happens when your character does it. For example, let's say the player characters have just climbed down into a dark chasm. The DM tells you that your characters see 3 tunnels leading from the chasm floor into the gloom. You and the other players decide which tunnels your character wants to adventure into first, and you tell the DM which way your characters are heading. That's exploration. You might try almost anything else. Finding a place to hide and set an ambush in case monsters come by. Shouting, "Hello, any monsters here?" as loud as you can. Or searching the chasm floor carefully in case there's anything interesting lying amid the boulders and moss. That's all exploration too. Decisions you make as you explore eventually lead to encounters. For example, one tunnel might lead into a nest of hungry gricks, if you decide to go that way. Your characters are heading into a combat encounter. Another tunnel might lead to a door sealed by a magic lock that you have to break through, a non-combat encounter. While exploring a dungeon or other adventure location, you might try to do any of the following actions. You might move down a hallway, follow a passage, cross a room, listen by a door to determine if you hear anything on the other side, try a door to see if it's locked, break down a locked door, search a room for treasure, pull levers, push statues or furnishings around, pick a lock of a trapped chest, jerry-rig a trap. The Dungeon Master decides whether or not something you try actually works. Some actions automatically succeed. You can move around without trouble, usually. Some require 1 or more die rolls, called checks, breaking down a locked door, for example. And some just simply can't succeed. Your character is capable of any deeds a strong, smart, agile, and well-armed human action hero could pull off. You can't punch your way through a door of 3-inch thick iron plate with your bare hands, for example, not unless you have powerful magic to help you out. Taking your turn. In exploration, you don't usually need to take turns. The DM normally prompts you by asking, "What do you do?" and you answer, and then the DM tells you what happens. You can break in with questions, offer suggestions to other players, or tell the DM a new action anytime you like. But try to be considerate of the other players. They want their characters to take actions too. In combat encounters, it works differently. The player characters and the monsters all take turns in fixed rotation, called initiative order. Example of play. Here is a typical D&D game session. The adventurers are exploring the ruins of an old dwarven stronghold, now infested by monsters. The players in this session are Dave, the Dungeon Master, DM Dave, Toby, whose character is the human fighter Amar, Cam, playing Isidro, a halfling rogue, and Deneen, whose character is an Eladrin wizard named Sarissa. This is where the idea of investigating a door to death comes from. Yeah, they specifically put 3 of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3 of the 8 options that they give on here, which is what, 37.5% of the options they give for while exploring you might want to do one of these things. 37.5% of the options given are about doors. Listen to a door, try a door, break down a door. And then pick a lock they've also given, but they specify treasure chest. Two hours of trying to get through a door, which apparently unlocked the whole time, yeah. I can't play because I don't have any of those names. Speak with doors. Speak with doors would be a very funny spell to add to the game. Example of play, Dave, the DM. Old stone steps climb up about 30 feet or so into the mountainside, alongside a cold stream splashing through the cave. The steps end at a landing in front of a big stone door, carved with the image of a bearded dwarf face. The door stands open about a foot or so. There's a bronze gong hanging from a bracket in the wall nearby. What do you do? Cam, who's playing Isidro.
I'll creep up and peek through the opening.
Deneen, who's playing Sarissa. I want to take a closer look at the gong. Toby, who's playing Amar.
I'm going to hang back and keep watch in case Isidro gets into trouble.
That voice isn't going to get annoying at all. Cam.
Not a chance. I'm a pro.
Okay, first Sarissa. You take a look at the gong. It's a battered old bronze gong, and there's a small hammer hanging beside it. Toby.
Don't touch it!
I wasn't going to. It looks like the doorbell to me. No sense telling the monsters that we're here. Okay, now for Isidro. Since you're trying to be sneaky, Cam, make a stealth check. Cam rolls a stealth check for Isidro.
I got a 22.
Isidro is pretty stealthy. Dave compares Isidro's stealth check results to the perception check results of the monsters that he knows are in the next room. Cam's roll beats the perception check, so the monsters don't know that the halfling is there.
So what does he see?
You're by the gong, remember? Isidro, you peek into the doors open. They've even included the DM chiding the player for getting ahead of themselves and like metagaming. You're not looking through the You're not looking through the door, he is. So shut up. You peek in the door's opening and you see a large stone hall with several thick pillars. There's a large fire pit in the centre of the room filled with dimming embers. You see 4 beast-like humanoids with hyena faces crouching around the fire pit, and a big animal, like a real hyena, but much bigger, dozing on the floor nearby. The hyena men are armed with spears and axes. Toby.
Gnolls! I hate those guys!
Deneen. Looks like we'll have to fight our way in. Can we take them? Cam. No problem. We've got the drop on them. Dave. So are you going through the door? The players all agree that they are. Show me where your characters are standing right before you go in. The players arrange their characters' miniatures on the dungeon tiles, and Dave has prepared for the encounter. They're now on the landing just outside the room with the gnolls.
Toby. All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Dave. You've surprised the gnolls. Everybody roll initiative and we'll see if you can take these guys or not. What happens next? Can Amar, Isidro and Sarissa defeat the gnolls? That depends on how the players play their characters and how lucky they are with their dice. There you go. That was a little example of how D&D plays. Did that make sense? Do you understand D&D now? Leroy Jenkins. How are they surprised after someone shouts 1, 2, 3? Yeah. The gnolls thank you for calling a countdown to combat. Did they just leave us on a cliffhanger? They did. I'm still lost on D&D. I'm more curious whether the DM gives them a surprise round. Was that a thing in 4E? I don't know if it was. We'll find out, I guess. The story ends, so they all died. Yeah. The core mechanic. How do you know if your sword swing hurts the dragon or just bounces off its iron-hard scales? How do you know if the ogre believes your outrageous bluff, or if you can swim the raging river and reach the other side? All these actions depend on very basic, simple rules. Decide what you want your character to do and tell the Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master tells you to make a check and figures out your chance of success, a target number for the check. You roll a 20-sided dice, d20, add some numbers, and try and hit the target number determined by the DM, and that's it. The core mechanic: roll a d20, you want to roll high. 2. Add all relevant modifiers. 3. Compare the total to a target number. 4. If your check result is higher than or equal to the target number, you succeed, and if the result is lower, you fail. If your check succeeds, you determine the outcome. If your check was an attack, you roll damage. If it was a check to see if you managed to jump across a pit, your check determines how far you jumped. If you succeeded on a check when you're trying to hide, the monsters don't see you. There's a little more to it than that, but the core mechanic governs all gameplay. All the rest of the rules in the book are extensions and refinements of this simple mechanic. 3 basic rules. In addition to the core mechanic, 3 principles are at the heart of the Dungeons & Dragons game. Many other rules are based on these assumptions. Simple rules, many exceptions. Every class, race, feat, power, and monster in the Dungeons & Dragons game lets you break the rules in some sort of a way. These can be very minor ways. Most characters don't know how to use longbows, but every elf does. These exceptions can also appear in very significant ways. A swing with a sword normally does a few points of damage, but a high-level fighter can use a power that can fell multiple monsters in a single blow. All these game elements are little ways of breaking the rules, and most of the books published for the Dungeons & Dragons games are full of these game elements. Specific beats general. If a specific rule contradicts a general rule, the specific rule wins. For example, a general rule states that you cannot use a daily power when you charge. But if you have a daily power that says you can use it when you charge, the power's specific rule wins. It doesn't mean you can use any daily power when you charge, just that one. And always round down. Unless otherwise noted, if you wind up with a fraction as the result of a calculation, round down even if the fraction is half or larger. For instance, this rule comes into play whenever you calculate 1/2 of your level. If your level is an odd number, you always round down to the next lower whole number. That is a rule that I choose to ignore in my games. D&D Insider. Think the game ends with the words on these pages? Think again. Check out www.dndinsider.com for all kinds of information, game tools, and community participation in your favorite game. For a nominal subscription, D&D Insider unlocks the ongoing content of Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine online, with issue updates happening multiple times each week. In addition to great articles, adventure hooks, and inside information, D&D Insider provides an interactive database of all things D&D, a custom D&D character builder that helps you create and manage your characters, a suite of powerful tools to help dungeon masters manage their adventures and campaigns, and the remarkable D&D game table that turns the internet into your kitchen table so you can play D&D with distant friends anytime, anywhere. They were starting with VTTs, that's good. D&D Insider is constantly updated with new material, new stories, new tools, and new features dedicated to the phenomenon that is the Dungeons & Dragons experience. Go to D&D Insider now! Blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Damn it, Toby. It bothers me that typing dub was a thing. Yeah. Sextuple you. There was one Dungeon and one Dragon magazine. Yeah, there was Dungeon magazine and Dragon magazine. There were 2 different magazines. Next, big thing was 4E was trying to integrate technology that couldn't do it what it needed to at the time. Yeah. Alright, that was chapter 1. Chapter 2, making characters. This is exciting. Alright, now we know how to play D&D, everybody. So far, I'll check in. Nothing different to 5e. A little bit prescriptive in the way that they've written things, but pretty much exactly the same. Chapter 2, making characters. Your first step in playing D&D is to imagine and then create a character of your own. Your character is a combination of the fantastic hero in your mind's eye and the different game rules that describe what he or she can do. You choose a race such as elf or dragonborn, a class such as wizard or fighter, and a distinct power such as magic spells or divine prayers. Then you invent a personality, description, and story for your character. Your character is your representative in the game, your avatar in the D&D world. A character is a combination of game statistics and role-playing hooks. The statistics define the physical aspects of what the character does in the world, while role-playing choices define who he or she is. Throughout this book, we use the word you interchangeably with your character. As far as the rules of the game are concerned, your character is you. You decide what your character does as you move through the world, exploring dungeons, fighting monsters, and interacting with other characters in the game. This chapter includes the following sections: character creation, a guide to the character creation process; ability scores, how to generate your character's ability scores; role-playing, elements to help you shape your character including alignment, deities, personality, appearance, background, and languages; making checks, expanding on the core mechanics to explain the basic die rolls of the game; gaining levels, rules for gaining experience levels and advancing your character; character sheet, explanation of a character sheet and where you can find information for each entry, with some cool artwork. If you're listening on podcast, I apologise that you won't be able to see the artwork. You'll have to go and watch the VOD on my YouTube. Race, class, and role. The first two decisions you make in character creation are picking your character's race and class. Together, these describe your basic character concept. For example, Dwarf Fighter, Eladrin Wizard, Tiefling Warlord. Your choice of character class also determines your character's role, the job your character does when the adventuring party is in a fight. You should pick the race and class combination that interests you the most. However, sometimes it's a good idea to first consider the role you want your character to fill. For example, if you join an existing game and none of the other players are playing a character in the defender role, you would help them out by playing a fighter or a paladin. Character race. A variety of fantastic races populate the world of Dungeons & Dragons game, people such as Dragonborn, Dwarves, and Elves. In any good-sized town or city, you typically run across at least a few individuals of each race, even if they're simply travellers or wandering mercenaries looking for the next challenge. Many different intelligent creatures populate the world, creatures such as dragons, mind flayers, and demons. These aren't characters you can play, they're monsters that you fight. Your character is an adventurer of one of the civilized races of the world. One of the civilized races. Dragonborn are proud, honor-bound, draconic humanoids. They wander the world as mercenaries and adventurers. They are strong and possess dragon-like abilities. Legendary for their toughness and strong will, dwarves are indomitable warriors and master artisans. Dwarven kingdoms are mighty mountain citadels, but clans of dwarf crafters can be found in any town or city. Eladrin are a graceful magical race born of the Feywild, the realm of the fairy. They love arcane magic, swordplay, and exquisite work in metal and stone. They live in shining cities on the borders of the Feywild. Kin to the Eladrin, elves dwell in the deep forests of the world and love the beauty of nature. Many elves, and some Eladrin too, live in wandering companies that visit many lands, staying a season or two in each. Elves and humans sometimes have children together, giving rise to half-elves. With many of the best features of both humans and elves, half-elves have capabilities distinct from both races. They are charismatic and versatile. Halflings, the smallest of the civilized races, are a plucky, quick, and likeable people. Halflings gather in small clans in the marshes and along the rivers of the world, travelling and trading widely with the other races. Brave and ambitious, humans are somewhat more numerous than the other races, and their city-states are among the brightest spots in a dark world. However, there still exist vast portions of the world where no human has set foot. And tieflings are a race descended from ancient humans who bargained with infernal powers. Tieflings are loners who live in the shadows of human society, relying on trusted allies only. You can learn more about these races in Chapter 3. Each character race has innate strengths that make it more suited to particular classes. However, you can create any combination you like. There's nothing wrong with playing against type. Dwarves aren't usually rogues, but you can create a capable and effective dwarf rogue by choosing your feats and powers carefully. I like that. I like that 4th edition is saying, hey, play what you want. I did like the Warlord class. It's a shame there isn't an official 5e1. I really don't know much about the Warlord. I will get to it. Still sounding pretty similar to 5e so far. Yep, 100% so far. Half-elf, the mutts and mules of D&D. Yep. Yep, indeed. Interesting to note, the difference of 5e so far is that in 5e there was no Eladrin in the player's handbook. That was not one of the core playable races. In 4e there is no gnome and there is no half-orc. So, just something worth noting. But otherwise, all the race choices at the beginning option was the same. In 5e, they divided it into most common for and least common. So the humans, halflings, dwarves, and elves were most common and given first, and then after that they switched it up and said, okay, you can also play some of these less common races like dragonborn, gnomes, tieflings, half elves, and half orcs. Character class. Many different types of heroes and villains inhabit the world. Sneaky rogues, clever wizards, burly fighters, and more. Character race defines your basic appearance and natural talents, but your character class is your chosen vocation, the specific trade you follow. You can learn more about these classes in Chapter 4. Clerics. Courageous and devout, clerics are holy warriors and healers. If you want to blast foes with divine powers, bolster your companions with healing and magic power, and lead them to victory with your wisdom and determination, play a cleric. Right out the gate, very clear, because they're given it in alphabetical order, so very clear right out the gate. There's no barbarians or bards in 4th edition. Moving on to fighter makes it clear that there's no druids either. No barbarians, bards, or druids. Fighters are experts in armed combat, relying on muscle, training, and pure grit to see them through. If you want to mix it up in close combat, protect your companions, and hack enemies into submission while their attacks rain down fruitlessly on your heavily armoured body, be a fighter. Moving straight from fighter to paladin makes it clear that there's no monks in 4e either. We've already lost 4 of the classes and gained no new ones yet. Paladin, devout warriors and champions of their deities, paladins are divinely inspired knights who fight at the front of a battle. If you want to challenge foes to single combat, fight for a cause, and smite your foes with divine might, then paladin is the class for you. Ranger. Expert trackers and scouts. Rangers are wilderness warriors who excel at hit-and-run fighting. If you want to master both bow and blade, vanish into the woods like a ghost, and bring down your foes before they know you're there, play a ranger. I should also mention there's no artificer. But that's not surprising because that was an Eberron-specific class anyway. Rogue. Thieves, scoundrels, dungeon delvers, jack of all trades. Rogues have reputation for larceny and trickery. If you want to slip into and out of the shadows on a whim, tumble across the field of battle with little fear of enemy reprisal, and appear from nowhere to plant a blade in your foe's back, be a rogue. Warlock, indicating there's no sorcerer. Wielders of forbidden law, warlocks are dangerous practitioners of magic who turn their baleful powers against their enemies. If you want to deal with mysterious powers, scour enemies with potent blasts of eldritch energy, not electrical energy. Just play an electrician. There's a new class called Sparky. They just messing with wiring. They're only available in modern day settings. And you can just fuck up wiring in your vicinity to specifically shock your enemies. If you want to deal with mysterious powers, scour enemies with potent blasts of eldritch energy and bedevil them with a potent curse. Warlock is the best choice for you. Warlord. What? What is the Warlord? That's a new one. Hardy and skilled in close combat, warlords are brilliant leaders who have the gift of inspiration. If you want to lead the party with the point of your sword, coordinate brilliant tactics with your comrades, and bolster and heal them when they falter, play a warlord. Wizard. Masters of potent arcane powers, wizards disdain physical conflict in favour of awesome magic. If you want to hurl balls of fire that incinerate your enemies, cast spells that change the battlefield, or research arcane rituals that can alter time and space, you should be a wizard. So what I'm picking up just from that tiny little paragraph each is that fighter is more the role of barbarian, hacking and smashing and relying on your muscle, And warlords are more like the fighters, being a bit more tactical when you're fighting it, maybe. That's kind of my very reductive way of summarizing the differences there. Warlords were kind of bards, but more fighty. Okay, more like fighty bards. Do I need to topple the current government before taking the Warlord class? We've lost like half the classes. Yeah, it's interesting, eh? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 classes with the addition of Warlord. So there's actually only 7 that lead over into the 12 of 5e. So they give you 8 classes that you can choose from, and there's 12 in 5e. So they added Barbarian, Bard, Druid, Monk, and Sorcerer. Interesting choice. Interesting. Because Wizard is really stand out as like the only magic caster. Warlocks, I feel, have got a very different flavour to Wizards. And the way that they use their magic is very different and stuff. I'll be interested to see if they still use the packed magic stuff. But yeah, it really feels like you don't have a lot of options for being a mage type. You don't have the sorcerer or the bard. And ranger really fills the role of the druid kind of nature guy. Interesting. Character role. Each character class specializes in one of 4 basic functions in combat: combat and area offense, defense, healing and support, and focus defense. The roles embodied by these functions are controller, defender, leader, and striker. The classic adventuring party includes 1 character of each role: wizard, fighter, cleric, and rogue. Interesting that it specifies the 4 classes that you can do. Also, it doesn't specify which of the... When you're introducing the character classes... Like, if I was writing this book, I'd put the character role paragraph first, and then the character class section next. And when I explain what the character classes are, I'd say clerics are defenders, or fighters, or like wizards are controllers, warlords are leaders. And like try and specify which one's which if you are going to lead into and they've bolded those things, so they are like proper nouns to them. They're important tags or terms that they want you to use. Controller, defender, leader, and striker are bold. They want you to use those 4 terms, so use them in the descriptions of the character classes. Character roles identify which classes can stand in for each other. For example, if you don't have a cleric in your party, a warlord serves just as well in the leader role. Roles also serve as handy tools for building adventuring parties. It's a good idea to cover each role with at least 1 character. If you have 5 or 6 players in your group, it's best to double up on defender first and then striker. It's really... Man, this really is feeling the kind of prescriptive nature. Obviously, it's giving language like, it's best to do this and blah, 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 but it's really like... not leaving you to make the decision. It's telling you, hey, this is the preference. You should have 1 of every role, and then when you have the 5th player, they should be a defender, and then the 6th player should be a striker. If you don't have all the roles covered, that's okay too. It just means that the characters need to compensate for the missing function. Future volumes of the Player's Handbook will introduce additional classes for all of these roles. Interesting. So they were already writing into the first book, hey, we're going to make more. It's a recipe for a campaign. 1 cup leader, 2 cups of defender, a dash of healer. Yeah. Sidebar, attack powers and utility powers. Every class gives you access to attack powers you can use to harm or hinder your enemies, and utility powers that help you and your allies. Powers in each of these broad categories are further defined by how often you can use them. You can use at-will powers as often as you choose. You can use encounter powers many times during the day of adventuring, but you have to rest a few minutes between each use, so you can use them only once each per encounter. Daily powers are so dramatic and powerful you can only use each one of them once per day. That's something very different about 4th edition, and one of the combat designs that a lot of people say actually got right in 4th edition is like it replaces the need for recharges on a long rest or recharges on a short rest by just saying, look, you know what an encounter is. You can only use this between encounters. Take a couple minutes. Like, you can't do it and then do it again. You have to take a couple minutes of rest and then you can do it again. And giving everybody those features feels a little bit more fair as well. All right. Controller, brackets, wizard. Wizard is the only class given as controller. So if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons the way that 4E wants you to play it, you must have a wizard in the party. That's interesting. I wonder why, when they were designing 4E, they looked at this and went, we've got 3 classes that fill the striker feature, and only one in the controller class, the controller role. Maybe we should repurpose the design of Ranger, Rogue, or Warlock to be a controller instead of a striker. Especially because they say you should double up on defender and defender first and then striker. So why give us the most options for striker? Peculiar choice. Alright, so controller, which is wizard. Controllers deal with large numbers of enemies at the same time. They favour offense over defense, using powers that deal damage to multiple foes at once, as well as subtler powers that weaken, confuse, and delay their foes. Defenders, the fighter and the paladin, they say. Defenders have the highest defenses in the game and good close-up offense. They are the party's frontline combatants wherever they're standing. That's where the action is. Defenders have abilities and powers that make it difficult for enemies to move past them or to ignore them in battle. So, big old tanks. Leaders, clerics and warlords. Leaders inspire, heal, and aid the other characters in an adventuring group. Leaders have good defenses, but their strength lies in powers that protect their companions and target specific foes for the party to concentrate on. Clerics and warlords, brackets and other leaders, encourage and motivate their adventuring companions, but just because they fill the leader role doesn't mean they're necessarily a group's spokesperson or commander. The party leader, if a group has one, might as easily be a charismatic warlock. Jesus, Rob, come on. The party leader, if the group has one, might as easily be a charismatic warlock or an authoritative paladin. Leaders, the role, fulfill their function through their mechanics. Party leaders are born through role-playing. So don't call them leader, and then in the very paragraph where you're trying to describe it, make it confusing whether you're meaning leader or leader. And to the point where you have to specify within your own description paragraph, brackets, the role. Leaders, brackets, the role, fulfill their functions through their mechanics. Party leaders are born through role-playing. And then finally, Striker, which is Ranger, Rogue, and Warlock. Strikers specialise in dealing high amounts of damage to a single target at a time. They have the most concentrated offense of any character in the game. Strikers rely on superior mobility, trickery, and magic to move around through foes and single out the enemy that they want to attack. Sounds very video game party creation, yeah. That is what I've heard as a sum up of 4th edition in general, is that it felt too much like a video game. Most video gamers are DPS, and so they've got 3 DPS categories, yeah. A lot of video game programmers had their hand in playing some D&D before, so they integrated it into what they'd programmed. Maybe it went the other way around. This is confusing as shit. I don't think it's... I mean, the leader part's confusing, but I don't think the rest of it's that hard to pass out. They're basically saying, look, you want a wizard, a fighter or a paladin, a cleric or a warlord, and a ranger, rogue, or warlock. And if you've got another person, you want another cleric or warlord. No, you want another fighter paladin, and then if you got another person after that, you want another ranger, rogue, warlock. Why do they call the healing and support character a leader? I don't understand. That is the part that's confusing. An inspirer. An inspirer would be cool. Yeah, inspirer. Ability scores. After you choose your race and class, determine your ability scores. 6 abilities provide a quick description of your character's physical and mental characteristics. Are you muscle-bound and insightful, brilliant and charming, nimble and hardy? Your character scores, your ability scores define these qualities, your strengths as well as your weaknesses. Strength measures your character's physical power. It's important for most characters who fight hand-to-hand. Melee basic attacks are based on strength. Clerics, fighters, paladins, rangers, and warlords have powers based on strength. Your strength might contribute to your fortitude defense, interestingly. Strength is the key ability for all athletics checks. Constitution. Don't do them alphabetically. Do them in the order that they appear on the sheet. Why would you do them alphabetically? Especially because the only thing that changes alphabetically is Constitution and Dexterity. Just keep them in the order. Anyway. Constitution represents your character's health, stamina, and vital force. All characters benefit from a high Constitution score. Your con score is added to your hit points at first level. At first level? Is your con score not added to your hit points at later levels in this game? Interesting. The number of healing surges you can use each day is influenced by your constitution. Healing surges? What? Many warlock powers are based on constitution. Ooh, warlocks are constitution based. That's cool. Your constitution might contribute to your fortitude defense. And constitution is the key ability for endurance skill checks. Endurance skill checks? There's a constitution-based skill check in 4E? That's cool. And then dexterity measures hand-eye coordination, agility, reflexes, and balance. Ranged basic attacks are based on dexterity. Many rangers and rogue powers are based on dexterity. Your dexterity might contribute to your reflex defense. If you wear light armor, your dexterity might contribute to your armor class. Dexterity is the key ability for acrobatics, stealth, and thievery skill checks. Seems like they called sleight of hand thievery in 4th edition. I'm glad they changed it. You use sleight of hand for way more than just thieving. Intelligence describes how well your character learns and reasons. Wizard powers are based on intelligence. Your intelligence might contribute to your reflex defense, interestingly. So your reflex might be dexterity and intelligence based. If you wear light armor, your intelligence might contribute to your armor class. Intelligence based on your armor class? What? Intelligence is a key ability for arcana, history, and religion skill checks. No nature, seems. Or investigation. Wisdom measures your common sense, perception, self-discipline, and empathy. You use your wisdom score to notice details, sense danger, and get a read on other people. Many cleric powers are based on wisdom. Your wisdom might contribute to your will defense, and wisdom is the key ability for dungeoneering. That's not a skill we have in 5e. Dungeoneering, heal, medicine, insight, nature, and perception checks. They've called survival nature, seemingly. Interesting. And charisma measures your force of personality, persuasiveness, and leadership. Many paladin and warlock powers based on charisma. Did I read warlock for warlord? No, it says warlock. Constitution says many warlock powers are based on constitution. Charisma says many warlock powers are based on charisma. So maybe warlocks are split between constitution and charisma. Also, I haven't seen Warlord. Oh no, I have. There it is. It's under strength. Interesting. Warlocks are a multi-purpose, it seems. Charisma might contribute to your will defense, interestingly. And charisma is your key ability for bluff, diplomacy, intimidate, and streetwise skill checks. Streetwise. That's a skill that I've been considering putting into D&D, actually. They have it in 4th edition. Bluff is what they call deception, obviously. Diplomacy is what they call persuasion, intimidate, and streetwise, they don't have a performance skill. Each of your ability scores is a number that measures the power of that ability. A character with a 16 strength is much stronger than a character with a 6 strength. A score of 10 or 11 is the normal human average. but players' characters are cut above the average in most abilities. As you advance in levels, your ability scores keep getting better. Your ability score determines an ability modifier that you add to any attack, check, roll, or defense based on that ability. For instance, making a melee attack with a battle axe is a strength attack, so you add the ability modifier for your strength score to your attack rolls and damage rolls. If your score is 17, you're pretty strong. You add a +3 to your attack rolls. Your ability scores also influence your defenses, since you add your ability modifier to your defense score. For a fortitude defense, so I think defenses is what they're calling saves. For a fortitude defense, you add your higher of your strength or constitution modifier. Interesting. For reflex defense, you add the higher of your dexterity or intelligence modifier. For will defense, you add the higher of your charisma or wisdom. Ooh, I like this. This is interesting. See, you don't have to go, oh shit, my build makes no sense for me to invest in dexterity, but I don't want to have a shitty dex save. You can invest in intelligence instead. The higher of the two. Interesting. If you wear light armor or no armor, you also add the higher of your dexterity or intelligence ability modifier to your armor class. So if you're wearing no armor or light armor, your intelligence ability modifier goes into your armor class. How hard you are to hit. Your intelligence makes no sense to me. How book smart you are is how hard you are to hit. Why does that make any sense? It doesn't. I understand wisdom or dexterity. Like when it comes to monks, adding their wisdom modifier to their AC has always made sense because it's their awareness. They're aware that someone's coming up behind them, so they're aware of how to dodge out of the way. They see somebody swinging like this, and they are just aware how to move out of the way of it. That seems like a wisdom-based thing, an instinct-based thing, rather than an intelligence-based thing. You're not doing maths on the trajectory of that arrow as it's flying towards you. You don't have time to think how to get out of the way. It's an instinctive thing, which makes sense for wisdom, not intelligence. So I don't agree with this one, but hey, let's keep going. It's just a table of ability modifiers now, which is the same as in Dungeons and Dragons. A 1 gives you a -5, an 8 gives you a -1, a 17 gives you a +3. The difference being it continues. The table goes up all the way up to 33, saying if you've got a 33 in something, you've got a +11. And then it says, and so on. So obviously you can get even higher than 33 in this game. Whereas in D&D, it caps at 20. And then with magic, it goes as high as 30. But then the actual maximum cap is 30, even for gods. Gods can't have a higher score than 30 in 5th edition, which I've always hated. But in 4th edition, apparently, you can go as high as you want. Generating ability scores. You can use one of 3 methods to generate ability scores. In each of these methods, you can take the numbers you generate and assign them to whichever ability score you want. Remember, your class determines which ability scores are important to you, and your race modifies certain ability scores. Ability scores increase as a character gains levels. When you assign your initial scores, remember that they'll improve with time. Didn't. I was like, I'm just saying the same things again. It's because my chat hadn't scrolled down. Wizards get higher AC now, baby. They have to hit around the stack of books that you're carrying, yeah. It assumes you've read lots of martial books. Intelligence lets you read your opponent's movements and calculate the place where they're going to hit. I mean, that's wisdom to me. What Sherlock Holmes is doing in the Robert Downey Jr. ones, where it like goes into bullet time and he's got a slight limp on the left. Attack the knee. Discombobulate. All that shit. When he's like deciding how to attack somebody based on their movements and body language. That's his ability to very quickly read somebody, which is insight, which is wisdom. I've read about combat, therefore I can avoid weapons. It makes no sense. Method 1. Standard array. Take these 6 numbers and assign them to your abilities in any way you like. 16, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 11. Interesting. So, in the standard array for 5th edition, they dropped the 16 to a 15. They got rid of the 11, and add an 8. So in standard array 5th edition, you're starting with a negative modifier, and you don't get as high as 16. So they've taken, it's just a straight up drop. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16 is the standard array in 4th edition. So 4th edition characters are stronger overall. Method 2, customizing scores. This method is a little more complicated than the standard array, but it gives comparable results. With this method, you can build a character who's really good in one ability score, but at the cost of having average scores in the other 5. Start with these 6 scores: 8, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. You have 22 points to spend on improving them. Interesting. So they don't want you to min-max by taking negative scores in anything. In more than one. They allow you to take one negative score, and everything else is average, they're saying. They also give you 22 points to spend, so if you were doing point buy in 5e, you'd get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. You'd get 32 points for this same thing. So they've given you 32 points instead of 27, I think it is. So you're already, again, whether you're taking standard array or customizing, you're making a more powerful character in 4e than you are in 5e. That's interesting. And then to get to a cost of the cost of raising a score from 1 to a higher number is shown on the table below. Interesting. It gives you a 9. Oh no, wait. It gives you a 9 only if you're starting with an 8. If your score is 8, you can pay 1 to make it 9 or 2 to make it 10. You must buy your score up to 10 before you can improve it further. Interesting. If your score is 11, it costs you 1 to get to... If your score is 10, it costs you 1 to get to 11. It costs you 2 to get to 12. It costs you 3 to get to 13. Which I think is correct to D&D. 5e, rather. It costs you 5 to get to 14. 7 to get to 15. And that's as high as it goes in point buy in 5e. You can only buy up to a 15. But in 4e, you can buy a 16 for the cost of 9 points. You can even buy a 17 for the cost of 12 points. And you can buy an 18 for the cost of 16 points. You only have 22 points to spend, but you can buy an 18 at starting level for 16 of your 22 points. Leaving you with 8 points to spend. No. Leaving you with 6 points to spend. So you'd be able to buy an 18, an 18, a 14, and 11. 18, 14, 11, 10, 10, 8 you could have. If you really wanted to min-max in 4e. Interesting. Here are some sample ability arrays you can generate using this method. That's good. This is what I started doing when I was I was on a plane once and I didn't have access to the internet, and I started thinking about my own game, my own Robert Hartley GM system that I invariably will make one day. And I was thinking about ability score generation and how I would do it, and I was like, maybe if you use D4s instead of D6s, you get a more bell curve situation. And I did a whole bunch of maths in my head using the notes app on my phone as well to jot them all down. And I thought the only way to do it that's like super clear to everyone is to just have like a table of options of like, you can buy them whatever you want, but if explaining how buying things is confusing, here's some examples of things you can buy. One of the options is the one that I just worked out. 18, 14, 11, 10, 10, 8. But you could also have a 14 in one and 13s in everything else. Don't know why you do that. That would be a terrible idea. Because the 13s are getting nothing you that 12s aren't, and so you'd be better turning 1, 2, 3 of those into 12s, and using the scores to turn another into a 14 and another into a 12. So you could get 3 14s, 2 12s, and an 11, for instance. Apply your racial abilities adjustments after you determine these scores. Method 3, rolling scores. Some players like the idea of generating ability scores randomly. The result of this method can be really good or can be really bad. On average, you'll come out a little bit worse than if you'd used the standard array. If you roll well, you can come out way ahead, but if you roll poorly, you might generate a character who's virtually unplayable. Use this method with caution. Roll 4 6-sided dice, add up the highest 3 numbers, do that 6 times, and assign the numbers you generate to your 6 ability scores. Apply your racial ability adjustments. I wondered, when I was reading that both standard array and customizing were more powerful in 4E, and having done the maths on it myself to work out what the difference is between standard array and rolling and stuff, doing that way in 5e, being pretty similar. I thought, how are they going to make rolling more powerful? And I wondered if they do the option of roll 4d6, drop the lowest, add the 3 highest ones, and do so 7 times, and then take the highest 6 numbers, because that gets you a slightly more powerful character on average. But no, they just went with saying, hey, this is weaker. I wonder if they were trying to discourage people doing the rolling for it method. If the total of your ability modifiers is lower than a +4 or higher than a +8 before your ability racial adjustments, your DM might rule that your character is too weak or too strong compared to the other characters in the group, and decide to adjust your scores to fit better within his or her campaign preferences. You cannot roll ability scores for a character you plan to use in RPGA events. Does not explain what RPGA events are. Role-playing game Anonymous. Alright. Skills, feats, powers, and equipment. This is a 2-column table laid out badly. Yes, it is. Yeah, that confused me at first as well. You're not a fan of point buy, dice rolling all the way? I only use point buy in my games. Point buy is the way to make the fairest of the games. Skills, feats, powers, and equipment. To round out the unique aspects of your character, choose some skills, feats, powers, and equipment. Your class tells you how many skills you start with at first level. Some races give you an additional skill choice as well. See Chapter 5 for details on skills. You also choose 1 heroic tier feat at first level, or 2 if you're a human. I like that. That's something they should have kept in 5e. That's something that they're bringing back in 5.5. Is that they actually, one of the things that I enjoy about 4e and the DMs that run 4e based games and things, is that everybody starts with a feat. Just allows you a little more customization of your character. It allows you to feel like you're an adventurer that is a tier above all the rest of the NPCs at your earliest levels of gameplay. Choose heroic tier feat at first level, or 2 if you're a human. Some classes grant bonus feats as well. Chapter 6 for feat descriptions. Your choice of class powers defines how your characters function in and out of combat. Each class section in Chapter 4 offers recommendations on choosing powers that reflect your approach. Finally, consult Chapter 7 to pick your equipment. You begin your career at first level with 100 gold pieces, enough to equip yourself with basic gear and maybe have a few coins left over. So they just give you money. They don't even say, like, you start with this, this, and this. They're just like, you start with money to buy gear with. Fill in the numbers. Once you've picked all the other aspects of your character, it's time to fill in the numbers. The calculations you need are described on page 30 of the instructions on completing your character sheet. Welcome in, Classic Sam. Thank you for the book. We are continuing the reading now. We're up to page 18. Oh, damn, 18 already. We're up to page 18, and we are reading the role-playing section. We're in chapter 2, creating your characters, and we're reading about role-playing. We've just created the numbers, and I've discovered 4E makes some powerful characters. The standard array and the point buy system are more powerful in 4E than they are in 5E. They nerfed them a little bit. Role-playing! The Dungeons & Dragons game is, first and foremost, a role-playing game, which means that it's all about taking on the role of a character in a game. Haven't we gone over this a million times already? Some people What is wrong? Why do my lips feel so dry today? I keep putting this on a million times, probably because I'm sick. The Dungeons & Dragons game is first and foremost a role-playing game, which means it's all about taking on the role of a character in the game. Some people take to this play acting naturally and easily, others find it more challenging. This section is here to help you out, whether you're comfortable and familiar with role-playing, or if you're new to the concept. Your character is more than just a combination of race, class, and feats. He or she is also one of the protagonists in a living, evolving storyline. Like the hero of any fantasy novel or film, they have ambitions and fears, likes and dislikes, motivations and mannerisms, moments of glory and failure. The best D&D characters blend the ongoing story with their adventuring careers with memorable characteristics and traits. Jaden, the 4th level human fighter, is a perfectly playable character even without any embellishment. But Jaden the Grimm's personality, brooding, fatalistic and honest, suggests a particular approach to negotiating with NPCs or discussing issues with the other characters. A well-crafted character personality expands your experience of the game dramatically. D&D is a role-playing game, but not necessarily an exercise in improvisational theatre. Sometimes the role you play is defender or leader. The character you're playing is engaged in combat and has a job to do, so your team comes out victorious. Even in combat, though, you can interject bits of personality and dialogue that make your character more than just the statistics on the character sheet. It's good of them to remind you, hey, you should be playing your character a bit. Sidebar, the RPGA. The RPGA is the official Wizards of Coast worldwide organised play experience for the Dungeons & Dragons game. So, Adventures League? Was it not called Adventures League during 4th edition? Through the RPGA, you can participate in massive shared world games, interact with thousands of community members, and earn exclusive rewards for participating in events and playing D&D. Whether you play at home, at your game store, on the D&D game table, or you travel to conventions and other events, the RPGA offers something for everyone. Visit the RPGA's website at www.wizards.com/RPGA for more information. I thought it was always called the Adventures League. Just in case it hasn't been made clear yet, D&D is a fantasy role-playing game. Oh, thank you, Hannah. What kind of role-playing game is it, though? This is what, the 15th time now in 18 pages that they've reminded us that this is an RPG? Yeah. Alignment. If you choose an alignment, interesting that they start with if, making it an option to choose an alignment for your character. If you choose an alignment, you're indicating your character's dedication to a set of moral principles: good, lawful good, evil, or chaotic evil. In a cosmic sense, it's the team you believe in and fight for most strongly. A character's alignment, or lack thereof, describes his or her moral stance. Good is all about freedom and kindness. Lawful good is about civilization and order. Evil is about tyranny and hatred. Chaotic evil is about entropy and destruction. And unaligned, having no alignment or not taking a stand. For the purpose of determining whether an effect functions on a character, some of lawful good alignment is considered good, and someone of chaotic evil alignment is considered evil. For instance, a lawful good character can use a magic item that is usable only by good aligned characters. This is fascinating. What you'll notice from what I just said is that there are 5 alignments in 4th edition. There is not the 3x3 table that we are all used to from 5th edition. There is not 2 separate and independent axes through which you can decide to be chaotic good. There is no chaotic good and there is no lawful evil. There is just evil, chaotic evil, good, and lawful good. And then unaligned or neutral, I suppose. So they've got these 5. So if you look at the 3x3 grid, there's no neutral, there's no lawful neutral, there's no chaotic neutral, there's no chaotic good, and there's no lawful evil. Fascinating. Alignments are tied to universal forces bigger than deities or any other allegiance you might have. If you're a high-level cleric with a lawful good alignment, you're on the same team as Bahamut, regardless of whether you worship Bahamut. Bahamut is not in any sense the captain of your team, just a particularly important player who has a large number of supporters. Most people in the world, and plenty of player characters, haven't signed up to play on any team. They're unaligned. Picking and adhering to an alignment represents a distinct choice. This is a really interesting and different way of doing alignment. If you choose an alignment for your character, you should pick either good or lawful good. Unless your DM is running a campaign in which all the characters are evil or chaotic evil, playing an evil or chaotic evil character disrupts an adventuring party, and, frankly, makes all the other players angry at you. Here's what the 4 alignments and being unaligned mean. They've got 4 alignments. What the fuck? This is really blowing my mind. This is where I rage quit 4th edition. Really? This, Cinehouse? This is the hill you died on? Alignments? They're so boring and unnecessary in D&D. Nobody uses alignments. The good alignment. Protecting the weak from those who would dominate or kill them is just the right thing to do. If you're a good character, you believe it is right to aid and protect those in need. You're not required to sacrifice yourself to help others, or to completely ignore your own needs, but you might be asked to place others' needs above your own. In some cases, even if that means putting yourself in harm's way. In many ways, that's the essence of being a heroic adventurer. The people of the town can't defend themselves from the marauding goblins, so you descend into the dungeon, at significant personal risk, to put an end to the goblin raids. You can follow rules and respect authority, but you're keenly aware that power tends to corrupt those who wield it, too often leading them to exploit their power for selfish or evil ends. When that happens, you feel no obligation to follow the law blindly. It's better for authority to rest in the members of a community rather than the hands of any individual or social class. When law becomes exploitation, it crosses into evil territory, and good characters feel compelled to fight it. Good and evil represent fundamentally different viewpoints, cosmically opposed and unable to coexist in peace. Good and lawful good characters, though, get along fine, even if a good character thinks a lawful good companion might be a little too focused on following the law rather than simply doing the right thing. So good is, if you want to play chaotic good, you play good. The lawful good alignment. An ordered society protects us from evil. If you're lawful good, you respect the authority of personal codes of conduct, laws, and leaders, and you believe that these codes are the best way of achieving your ideals. Just authority promotes the well-being of its subjects and prevents them from harming one another. Lawful good characters believe just as strongly as good ones do in the value of life, and they put even more emphasis on the need for the powerful to protect the weak and lift up the downtrodden. The exemplars of the lawful good alignment are shining champions of what's right, honourable, and true, risking or even sacrificing their lives to stop the spread of evil in the world. When leaders exploit their authority for personal gain, when laws grant privileged status to some citizens and reduce others to slavery or untouchable status, law has given in to evil, and just authority becomes tyranny. You are not only capable of challenging such injustice, but morally bound to do so. However, you would prefer to work within the system to right such problems, rather than resorting to more rebellious and lawless methods. Fair enough. Makes sense. Happy and I would get into post-game fights because her was the only chaotic evil character in our campaign. Yeah, I mean, it's right then, isn't it? The other players will be frankly mad at you. I think it's funny that it writes that in the book. I'm playing in a Strahd campaign and we've all turned evil for one reason or another. Things got dark, so I'm thinking of joining Strahd as he's not as evil as the party at this point. Jesus. If a party bullies a weak demon, you should defend the demon? I don't think so. What if the laws are created by evil? Then you need to destroy the evil. Just do so within the laws if you can. It's kind of like the people who say the lawmakers and the rich folk and the politicians are the ones that are making the laws, but they're also the ones that are causing all the problems in the world because of the laws they're making and the fact that they're uber wealthy and rich and we're in late stage capitalism. Like that's the problem, and so we need to. And then people are like, we need to work within the laws that they've created to beat them at their own game. Those are the lawful good people. And then there's others who say, no, we need to break the laws and fuck the authorities and stuff because they're the ones who are making the laws. And there's the chaotic good people. Alignment versus personality, sidebar. Isn't alignment just another part of your personality? Yes and no. Certain personality traits have moral weight, particularly those that influence how you interact with others. Cruelty and generosity can be considered personality traits, but they're also manifestations of your beliefs about the importance and worth of other people. A character who aspires to good might have a cruel streak, but if that streak manifests too frequently or in extreme ways, it's hard to say he's really upholding his moral ideals. Other personality traits have no moral weight at all. A fastidious and well-organised person can just as easily be evil as good. An impulsive prankster can also be good or evil. These quirks of personality are mostly unrelated to alignment, but your alignment might affect the way your personality translates into action. An evil prankster might favour cruel practical jokes that cause personal harm and damage property, while a good one would steer away from such injurious acts. The evil alignment. It is my right to claim what others possess. Evil characters don't necessarily go out of their way to hurt people, but they're perfectly willing to take advantage of the weakness of others to acquire what they want. Scam artists. There's very few people in Earth that I think are genuinely evil. People who knowingly defraud other people out of their money. Basically, scam artists and thieves. I genuinely think those people are evil people. Thieving to support yourself. Like, thieving because you're impoverished and you're coming from a cycle of poverty where you don't know how to break out of it, and that's a different story. But people who have other options and choose to become fucking scam artists and defraud old ladies out of their life savings, those people can be strung up by the testes by piano wire for all I care. Evil characters use rules and order to maximize personal gain. They don't care whether laws hurt other people. They support institutional structures that give them power, even if that power comes at the expense of others' freedom. Politicians. Slavery and rigid caste structures are not only acceptable but desirable to evil characters as long as they are in a position to benefit from them. Basically, folk who are billionaires. I think billionaires in general are evil people, because I don't think you can be a billionaire without benefiting from the cost of other people's labour. And not paying people what they're worth and stuff. You don't become a billionaire by spending your own money. You become a billionaire by exploiting other people. The chaotic evil alignment. I don't care what I have to do to get what I want. Chaotic evil characters have a complete disregard for others. Each believes he or she is the only being that matters and kills, steals, and betrays others to gain power. Their word is meaningless and their actions destructive. Their worldviews can be so warped that they destroy anything and anyone that doesn't directly contribute to their interests. By the standards of good and lawful good people, chaotic evil is as abhorrent as evil, perhaps even more so. Chaotic evil monsters such as demons and orcs are at least as much threat to civilization and general well-being as evil monsters are. An evil creature and a chaotic evil creature are both opposed to good, but they don't have much respect for each other either, and rarely cooperate towards common goals. And then finally, unaligned. Just let me go about my business. If you're unaligned, you don't actively seek to harm others or wish them ill, but you also don't go out of your way to put yourself at risk without some hope for reward. You support law and order while doing so benefits you. You value your own freedom without worrying too much about protecting the freedom of others. A few unaligned people, and most unaligned deities, aren't undecided about alignment. Rather, they've chosen not to choose, either because they see the benefits of both good and evil, or because they see themselves as above the concerns of morality. The Raven Queen and her devotees fall into the latter camp, believing that moral choices are irrelevant to their mission, since death comes to all regardless of alignment. Death comes to us all. Freeze over that conversation. Alright, we're about to get a bunch of deities. Deities are the most powerful immortal creatures, residents of the countless dominions that swirl through the astral sea. They appear in dreams and visions to their followers and wear countless different faces and artwork depicting them. They appear in dreams and visions to their followers and wear countless different faces, and artwork depicting them shows them in variety of forms. Their true nature is beyond any physical form. Corellon is often depicted as an Eladrin, but he is no more an Eladrin than he is a Fey Panther. He is a god, and he transcends the physical laws that binds even angels to their concrete forms. Some deities are good or lawful good, some are evil or chaotic evil, and some are unaligned. Each deity has a vision of how the world should be, and the agents of the deities seek to bring that vision to life in the world. Except for the chaotic evil gods, Grumsh and Lolth, all deities are enemies of the demons, which would rather destroy the world than govern it. Most people revere more than one deity, praying to different gods at different times. Commoners in a small town might visit a temple that has 3 altars, where they pray to Bahamut for protection, Pelor for fertile crops, and Moradin to aid the skill at crafting. Clerics and paladins are more often serve a single deity, championing that god's particular cause in the world. Other adventurers range across the spectrum, from paying lip service to the whole pantheon, to fervently serving a single god, to ignoring the gods entirely as they pursue their own divine ascension. Many deities have contradictory versions of how the world should work. Even the agents and worshippers of deities who share an alignment can come into conflict. Avandra. Avandra is good alignment. The god of change, Avandra delights in freedom, trade, travel, adventure, and the frontier. Her temples are few in civilized lands, but her wayside shrines appear through the world. Halflings, merchants, and all types of adventurers are drawn to her worship, and many people raise a glass in her honour, viewing her as the god of luck. Her commandments are few. Luck favours the bold. Take your fate into your own hands, and Avandra will smile upon you. Strike back against those who would rob you of your freedom and urge others to fight for their own liberty. And change is inevitable, but it takes the work of the faithful to ensure that change is for the better. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good. Bahamut, lawful good. Called the Platinum Dragon, Bahamut is the god of justice, protection, nobility, and honour. Lawful good paladins often revere him, and metallic dragons worship him as the first of their kind. Monarchs are crowned in his name. He commands his followers thus: uphold the highest ideals of honour and justice. Be constantly vigilant against evil and oppose it on all fronts, and protect the weak, liberate the oppressed, and defend just order. Corellon, unaligned. The god of spring, beauty, and the arts, Corellon is the patron of arcane magic and the Fae. He seeded the world with arcane magic and planted the most ancient forests. Artists and musicians worship him, as do those who view their spellcasting as an art, and his shrines can be found throughout the Feywild. He despises Lolth and her priestesses for leading the drow astray. He urges his followers thus: cultivate beauty in all that you do, whether you're casting a spell, composing a saga, strumming a lute, or practicing the arts of war. Seek out lost magic items, forgotten rituals, and ancient works of art. Corellon might have inspired them in the First World's days. And thwart the followers of Lolth at every opportunity. Interesting. I find it weird that under character before we get to character creation, like classes and races, we're outlining deities. Not a specific setting either. Like, I understand this kind of a thing for, like, first edition D&D, before they had, like, an official setting, or the idea of settings, and the fact that you can tell D&D stories in different settings. But this is 4th edition. They've been doing settings for decades, and yet they've not mentioned settings. They're just setting all of this up as if this is the only setting you can play Dungeons and Dragons in. What's that about? They've not mentioned the fact that, hey, these are just these are the gods of XYZ setting, and you can make up your own. They're just outlining as prescriptive as like these are the gods of D&D, which is interesting to say the least. Erathis. This is not one I've heard of, I don't think. Erathis, unaligned. Erathis is the god of civilization. She is the muse of great invention, founder of cities, and author of laws. Rulers, judges, pioneers, and devoted citizens revere her, and her temples hold prominent places in most of the world's major cities. Her laws are many, but their purpose is straightforward. Work with others to achieve your goals. Community and order are always stronger than disjointed efforts of lone individuals. Tame the wilderness to make it fit for habitation. Defend the light of civilization against encroaching darkness. And seek out new ideas, new inventions, new lands to inhabit, new wilderness to conquer, build machines, build cities, build empires. Interesting. She's all about civilization, the god of civilization. Yeah, I like that. I like that as an idea. That's cool. Ioun. Unaligned. Ioun is the god of knowledge, skill, and prophecy. Sages, seers, and tacticians revere her, as do all who live by their knowledge and mental power. Corellon is the patron of arcane magic, but Ioun is the patron of its study. Libraries and wizard academies are built in her name. Her commands are also teachings. Seek the perfection of your mind by bringing reason, perfection, and emotion into balance with one another. Accumulate, persevere, and distribute knowledge in all forms. Pursue education, build libraries, and seek out lost and ancient lore. And be watchful at all times for the followers of Vecna, who seek to control knowledge and keep secrets, oppose their schemes and unmask their secrets, and blind them within the light of truth and reason. Cord, unaligned. Cord is the storm god and the lord of battle. He revels in strength, battlefield prowess, and thunder. Fighters and athletes revere him. He is a mercurial god, unbridled and wild, who summons storms over land and sea. Those who hope for better weather appease him with prayers and spirited toasts. He gives few commands. Be strong, but do not use your strength for wanton destruction. Be brave, and scorn cowardice in any form, and prove your might in battle to win glory and renown. Melora. Melora is unaligned. Melora is the god of the wilderness and the sea. She is both the wild beast and the peaceful forest, the raging whirlpool and the quiet desert. Rangers, hunters, and elves revere her, and sailors make offerings to her before beginning their voyages. Her strictures are these: protect the wild places from the world of destruction and overuse, oppose the rampant spread of cities and empires, hunt aberrant monsters and other abominations of nature, and do not fear or condemn the savagery of nature, live in harmony with the wild. I wonder if Melora and Erathis were at direct opposition, because Erathis is like, expand into the wilderness, tame it, make it civilization. And Melora is, oppose the rampant spread of cities and empires. So it seems like they would be at direct odds. Moradin. Moradin is lawful good. Moradin is the god of creation and patron of artisans, especially miners and smiths. He carved the mountains from primordial earth and is the guardian and protector of the hearth and the family. Dwarves from all walks of life follow him. He demands those behaviours of his followers. Meet adversity with stoicism and tenacity. Demonstrate loyalty to your family, your clan, your leaders, and your people. And strive to make a mark on the world, a lasting legacy. To make something that lasts is the highest good, whether you are a smith working at a forge, or a ruler building a dynasty. We're almost there. We've only got 3 more. Pelor is good aligned. God of the sun and summer, Pelor is the keeper of time, supports those in need, and opposes all that is evil. As the lord of agriculture, he is agriculture and the bountiful harvest, he is the deity most commonly worshipped by ordinary humans, and his priests are well received wherever they go. Paladins and rangers are found among his worshippers. He directs his followers thus: alleviate suffering where you find it, bring Pelor's light into places of darkness, showing kindness, mercy, and compassion, and be watchful against evil. The Raven Queen, unaligned. The name of the god of death is long forgotten, but she is called the Raven Queen. She is the spinner of fate and the patron of winter. She marks the end of each mortal life, and mourners call upon her during funeral rites in the hope that she will guard the departed from the curse of undeath. She expects her followers to abide by these commandments. Hold no pity for those who suffer and die, for death is the natural end of life. Bring down the proud who try to cast off the chains of fate, and the instrument of the Raven Queen, as the instrument of the Raven Queen, you must punish hubris where you find it, and watch for the cults of Orcus and stamp them out wherever they arise. The demon prince of undead seeks to claim the Raven Queen's throne. And finally, Sehanine. Sehanine is unaligned. God of the moon and autumn, Sehanine is the patron of trickery and illusions. She has close ties to Corellon and Melora, and is a favoured deity among elves and halflings. She is also the god of love, who sends shadows to cloak lovers' trysts. Scouts and thieves ask for her blessing on their work. Her teachings are simple. Follow your goals and seek your destiny. Keep to the shadows, avoiding the blazing light of zealous good and the utter darkness of evil, and seek new horizons and new experiences, and let nothing tie you down. Those are all the good and unaligned monsters. Gods, rather, not monsters. Evil and chaotic evil deities. Your character can worship an evil or a chaotic evil deity without being of the same alignment, but that's walking a fine line. The commandments of these deities exhort their followers to pursue evil ends and commit destructive deeds. The commandments of evil and chaotic deities aren't included here. They're described in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Asmodeus. How do you guys say it? I've heard it both ways quite often, so I don't know which is the more accepted term. Asmodeus. I think Asmodeus might be the one that I say. I don't even know now. Either, neither, neither. Asmodeus. You say it is Asmodeus, not Asmodeus. Thank you, Redal. Asmodeus. Amadeus. Ooh, Asmodeus. Asmodeus. Asmo. I'll just call him Asmo. Asmo the Asbo is the evil god of the nine hells. He is the patron of the powerful, god of tyranny and domination, and the commander of devils. Bane is the evil god of war and conquest. Militaristic nations of humans and goblins serve him and conquer in his name. Grumsh is the chaotic evil god of destruction, lord of marauding barbarian hordes. Where Bane commands conquest, Grumsh exhorts his followers to slaughter and pillage. Orcs are his most fervent followers. Lolth is the chaotic evil god of shadow, lies, and spiders. Scheming and treachery are her commands, and her clerics are a constant force of disruption in the otherwise stable society of the evil drow. Tiamat is the evil god of wealth, greed, and envy. She urges her followers to take vengeance for every slight, and she is the patron of chromatic dragons. Torog is the evil god of the Underdark, patron of jailers and torturers. Common superstition holds that if his name is spoken, the king that crawls will burrow up from below and drag the hapless speaker underground to an eternity of imprisonment and torture. Maybe that's why I've never heard of him. Vecna is the evil god of undead, necromancy, and secrets. He rules that which is not meant to be known, and that which people wish to keep secret. Zahir is the evil god of darkness. Not Vahir. Vahir is the evil god of darkness, poison, and assassins. Snakes are his favoured creation, and the Yuan-Ti revere him above all other gods. Personality. Dungeons & Dragons is a game of heroic extremes. See, if you forgot from the several pages of talking about gods, we're in the middle of character creation, and we were talking about your alignment, and the alignment you choose for your character creation. And then we just went off on a tangent of deities, which I guess, like, if you're playing a character that worships a deity, then maybe that's information for you, but it's not general information for all characters. You don't have to worship any of these characters any of these deities. So it's weird that you just shoehorned it into the middle of character creation. We talked about stats, we talked about rolling scores, we talked about skills, feats, powers, talked about filling in numbers, alignment, and then before we get to personality, so between alignment and personality, which are so goddamn close that they needed a sidebar to differentiate what the two are, between those two very closely related things, you just shoehorn every information about all of the gods of the world in there? What a weird layout for the book. Anyway. Personality. Dungeons & Dragons is a game of heroic extremes, populated by legendary heroes and unrepentant villains. Your character needs only a few personality traits that you can use as role-playing touchstones, key traits that you can focus on that are fun to play. A complex background and extensive motivations aren't necessary, although you can flesh out your character's personality as much as you like. A typical D&D adventure offers many opportunities for your character's personality to shine. Those role-playing opportunities usually arise in three kinds of situations: social interactions, decision points, and dire straits. The following sections pose questions to help you choose personality traits for your character, which you can write on your character sheet. Select one personality trait for each kind of situation. If you already have a personality in mind for your character, you can skip this section. The information here is for the inspiration only. I really like this. I think I'm going to enjoy the fact that they've split it into social interactions, decision points, and dire straits. That's a pretty cool way of influencing your decision-making process. I thought he was written by someone that probably had ADHD. That's what I always thought. Yeah, they just went, blah, 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 deities. We're talking about alignments. We're talking about alignments. We're talking about the evilness and the fact that you can worship an evil. Oh, I'll talk about the gods now and the gods and the... Oh, no, fuck, what was I doing? I was meant to be doing personality. Getting distracted, going off on a hyper-focus thing. Or a person that really liked clerics, yeah. And was like, totes need this now. If you're talking about alignment, you need to know what alignment god you'll be following. Like, don't get me wrong, I can totally understand the link between alignment and deity. But what they needed here was a few paragraphs on each alignment as they've got. This is how the evil alignment people act. This is how chaotic evil alignment act. And then they needed a table of deities and be like, these are the deities that are each alignment, and just the alignment of the deity. The purview of the deity and their alignment. So Avandra is the god of change and is the god of good. Bahamut is a lawful good and is the god of justice and protection. Corellon is unaligned and is blah blah blah. And just like table list them out and say these are the gods. If you want to know more about the gods, they will be in a later chapter under a section that actually makes sense. Because then you're still maintaining your we're in character creation. The only part about the gods that I need to know for my character creation is which one do I worship. Not all of the information about them and all of their tenets. This is why ADHD authors need OCD editors. Yeah. Alright, so social interactions. When you communicate with a non-player character outside of combat and try to influence that individual, that's a social interaction. You might try to persuade a guardian monster to let you pass, negotiate with a merchant lord to increase the pay offered for a dangerous mission, or question a surly centaur about the goblins that ambush travelers in the forest. The DM plays the part of any NPC you talk to, while you and the other players decide what your characters say, even speaking in character if you like. How do others perceive you in social interactions? Are you cheerful, talkative, charming, reserved, witty, relaxed? How optimistic are you? Are you enthusiastic, grim, hopeful, self-assured, fatalistic, or brooding? And how trusting are you? Are you gullible, open-minded, skeptical, suspicious, naive, or trusting? I think those are very good questions to ask. I think I really like this part of the character creation so far. Is like just being there to remind people who are not necessarily good at creating characters. Maybe they don't come from an acting background, so they haven't done it before. And these are just prompting questions to be like, what sort of a character? Have a think about what sort of a character you are in social situations. Decision points. When you face tough choices in an adventure, your character's personality can influence the decisions you make. Do you try to sneak past the dragon's cave, approach openly to parley, or storm in with blades drawn and spells blazing? Which of the 6 stone doors in the entry hall do you open first? Do you save the captives from the trap, or pursue the slavers? When your group tries to decide what to do next, how do you approach such conversations? How assertive are you at a decision point? So this is the actual prompting questions. Those were all rhetorical questions. These are actual prompting questions. How assertive are you at a decision point? Humble, timid, adaptable, easygoing, commanding, or impatient? How conscientious are you about following rules? Scrupulous, honest, pragmatic, flexible, dutiful, or wild? And finally, how empathetic are you? Kind, protective, stern, hard-hearted, thoughtful, or oblivious? So that would be a pretty good way of generating your character sheet. Rather than personalities, ideals, bonds, and flaws, you can say, you can just write down 3 adjectives. I'm reserved, hopeful, and gullible. I am humble, flexible, and thoughtful. And then dire straits, whatever that is. Some of the most memorable demonstrations of a character's personality appear in Dire Straits. A character retorts to a villain's threat with a trademark one-liner, shouts a famous battle cry, leaps into harm's way to protect others, or turns and flees in the face of overwhelming odds. Every battle, hazard, or other dire situation offers opportunities for role-playing, especially if things go awry. When your character lands in a dire situation, how does he or she usually react? Do you follow a code? Do you follow your heart? Do you look out for yourself and others? These are the prompting questions. How courageous are you in dire straits? Brave, cautious, competitive, reckless, steady, or fierce? How do you feel when faced by setbacks? Stoic, vengeful, driven, bold, impassioned, or happy-go-lucky? And how are your nerves? Calm, impulsive, patient, skittish, unshakable, or restless? I like it. It's a good way of prompting people. Just be like, I am brave, skittish, and bold. Brave and the bold and the beautiful. People who don't come from an acting background, I've never met them. I've done this as a corporate quiz for how are you in general, and then under stress. The young and the reckless. How bold, you're beautiful. Oh, wow. That's how I flirt. Mannerisms. The easiest way to bring your character to life at the gaming table is to adopt distinctive mannerisms, particularly patterns of speech or other behaviours that you can take on at the table to convey how your character looks, sounds, and acts. If you are naturally inclined to spin dice or shuffle cards while the game takes place, you might consider incorporating that behaviour into your character. Perhaps your character carries a deck of cards that he shuffles when he's bored or nervous, and maybe she crouches to the ground and creates little sculptures out of rubble while she's waiting for her companions to decide where to go next. By contrast, another character might vociferously participate in those deliberations, frequently resorting to exclamations such as, "By Cord's right arm!" to emphasise his opinion. Speech patterns can be even more distinctive. A dwarf who never enters battle without shouting, "The dwarves are upon you!" injects a dose of fun role-playing just as the die rolling is getting more intense. A wizard who never speaks except in haiku might be carrying the idea of a distinctive speech into the extreme, but if you can pull it off, brackets, try writing a page full of standbys to cover common situations before the game begins, everyone at the table will remember your character for years. Another good way to think about speech and other mannerisms is to create specific prompts your character says or does when using certain powers. For example, your paladin might yell, "Feel the might of Bahamut!" every time she uses the righteous smite power, and murmur, "Bahamut's healing breath washes over you," whenever she uses lay on hands. Appearance. Is your character tall, short, or in between? Solid and muscular, or lean and wiry? Male or female? Brackets or other. Old or young? These decisions have no real impact on the game, but they might affect the way that non-player characters, and even the other players, think about your character. Each race description in Chapter 3 gives you your average height and weight for a character of that race. You can decide for your character to be above or below average. You should also decide what colour skin, hair, and eyes your character has. Most races approximate the human range of coloration, but some races also have unusual coloration, such as the stony grey skin of dwarves or the violet eyes of some elves. Finally, consider features that distinguish your character from others. Some of these might be inborn, such as an unusual eye colour or skin colour, while others might be habits of fashion or the scars of past injuries. Jewellery, clothing, tattoos and birthmarks, hairstyles and colours, posture. One unusual feature from among these choices can make your character stand out in the player's minds. Background. Your character's background often stays there, in the background. What's most important about your character is what you do in the course of your adventures, not what happened to you in the past. Even so, thinking about your birthplace, family, and upbringing can help you decide how to play your character. These questions can help you start thinking about your background. Why did you decide to be an adventurer? How did you acquire your class? If you're a fighter, for example, you might have been in the militia, come from a family of soldiers, or trained in a martial school, or maybe you're a self-taught warrior. How did you acquire your starting equipment? Did you assemble it piece by piece over time? Was it a gift from a parent or mentor? Do any of your personal items have special significance? What's the worst event of your life? What's the best thing that ever happened to you? Do you stay in contact with your family? What do your relatives think of you and your chosen career? Down the bottom as a space filler, I guess, it's given you some Dwarven script and some Elven script. My background is one day someone gave me 100 gold and I went to market. I'm a 14-foot tall hobbit with red skin, slightly dubious parentage, I believe. I suddenly popped into existence in a tavern and then someone wanted me to slay something. Yeah, could be that as well. I find that really interesting, that the significance of background in a 4th character is all of that paragraph. And they basically say in the paragraph, background isn't important. They're like, background's in the background. What's most important is what you do in the future, not the past. Whereas the direction that they're going with 5 and then now into 5.5 even further is, hey, your background's actually really important. As far as I understand, they have moved ability score improvements to background rather than race. So your race does not affect your background anymore, as far as I understand, but your background does. So if you come from a charlatan background, you are more dexterous and intelligent or whatever. And so they've gone complete 180 on this, and they're saying, hey, your background is super important, and it's probably the reason why you got into the class that you're in at the moment. And it's also the reason why you speak certain languages and all the rest of it and have certain skills. Languages and scripts. 10 languages form the basis of every dialect spoken throughout D&D's game's many worlds. Wow. They are coming out strong by just saying, it's 10 and no more, no less. 10 languages. These languages are transcribed in different scripts, most of which are alphabets from the flowing characters of the Relanic alphabet to the runes of the Davek alphabet. The supernal script is a system of hieroglyphics. Depending on your character's race, you start off knowing 2 or 3 languages and the script associated with each. You can learn additional languages by taking the linguist feat. You can't choose the abyssal or supernal languages as a first level character. So here are the 10 languages, everybody. Common, Deep Speech, Draconic, Dwarven, Elven, Giant, Goblin, Primordial, Supernal, and Abyssal. Interestingly, the language Common is spoken by humans, halflings, and tieflings. The Deep Speech is spoken by Mind Flayers, Githyanki, and Kuatoa. Draconic is spoken by dragons, dragonborns, and kobolds. Dwarven is spoken by dwarves and Azer. Elven is spoken by elves, Eladrin, and Fomorians. Giant is spoken by giant orcs and ogres. Goblin is spoken by goblins, hobgoblins, and bugbears. Primordial is spoken by Ifrits, Archons, and Elementals. Supernal is spoken by angels, devils, and gods, so it's a mixture of celestial and infernal. And Abyssal is spoken by demons, gnolls, and Sahurgan. Interesting. Interesting that demons and devils speak different languages, but angels speak the same language as devils. The Dungeon Master's Guide has more information about languages and their scripts. Elven and Deep Speech use the same script. That's bizarre. Dwarven and Giant both use Davok. Primordial and Abyssal both use the Barazhad script. How bizarre. Alright, before you go any further, making checks. That's the making checks section. What about amnesia characters that don't know their background? What about them? Are you talking about what about them in 5.5 where your background affects all of the things that you know? Because that wouldn't change anything if you're amnesiac. It doesn't change that you had a background of working on a farm and so you are stronger and hardier. Your strength and constitution go up, and you learned this language and you didn't learn that language, and you have this skill and that skill because you had a background of working on a farm. Just because you forget all of that doesn't mean that it changes you. You still had that background. If that's what you meant. Making checks. Before you go any further, it's important to understand the use of the core mechanic and how it applies to every aspect of the game. Every power, skill, and special feature in the game is keyed to one of 6 ability scores. You resolve actions by making different checks, different kinds of checks, which all use the same core mechanic. Roll a d20, add modifiers, announce the result. DM compares the check result against the difficulty class of the task or the attack that you're attempting. Most difficulty class numbers are set for the Dungeon Master. An Ogre Savage has an armor class of 19. Climbing a typical dungeon wall has a DC 15. Other times your DM will estimate the DC of a task that isn't specifically covered by the rules. The D&D game uses 3 basic kinds of checks, which are described further below. Attack rolls, skill checks, ability checks. Interesting. Skill checks and ability checks are different things. If you try to hit a monster with a mace, you're making a strength attack against the monster's AC. If you try to blast a monster with a fireball, it's an intelligence attack against a reflex defense. If you try to balance on a tightrope, it's an acrobatics check against the DC set by the DM. If you try to bash down a door, it's a strength check against the DC that depends on the nature of the door. The description of each power and skill tells you what ability to base its check on. Occasionally you make a check that is compared against someone else's check result. Doing this is called making an opposed check. A modifier is any number that adds or subtracts to a die roll. The most commonly used modifiers are based on your ability scores. A bonus refers to a positive value, and if a feat adds your dexterity modifier to damage, it won't do anything if your dexterity modifier isn't positive. A penalty is the opposite. It's always negative. Part of creating a character is figuring out your normal check modifiers for common tasks such as making attacks or using skills. Most checks in the game add additional modifiers, including the following. Your bonus from your weapon proficiency if you're making an attack. Your skill training bonus if you're using a skill. Special bonuses for feats if you've chosen or magic items you're using. Bonuses that apply to the circumstances of the check, charge attacks and combat advantage, for example. And penalties that apply to the circumstances, your target has cover or you're attacking while prone, and so on. Your modifiers reflect everything about you that is relevant to the task at hand, your training, competence, and native ability. Your d20 roll represents luck, fate, fortune, and unpredictable opportunities or sudden distractions. A battle is full of frantic action, and the random die roll represents that mayhem. Which I like. I like using a d20 system because I think that the swing from 1 to 20 is enormous, and I think that does represent all of the chaos of a battle pretty well. If you are rolling a 3 as a proficient fighter, that is not to say that you are a bad fighter suddenly, all of a sudden, even after you've been doing it for years and you're like one of the best in the land and you're a level 17 fighter, blah, blah, blah. If you're rolling a 3, it's because circumstances outside of your control have meant that your balance was off, or the thing you're attacking blocked really well, or the sun suddenly shone through the trees like a cloud moved and suddenly they've got glare in your eyes, or the glint from somebody else's sword shone in your eye that moment, or like sand blew up and hit you in the... There's a whole bunch of things, that the mayhem that you can't possibly account for with number crunching, that is accounted for just by the dice roll. And as the DM, it's your job to describe that well enough that it feels like, yeah, it's not me missing because I'm garbage, it's me missing because even somebody as good as me couldn't have hit that attack. Sort of similar in D&D, devils are divas that were sent to fight the abyss and became corrupted by it, not the chaos, but the evil. Yeah. Intelligence attack against reflex defense sounds a bit random. It makes sense. Like if you're firing a fireball, it's intelligence based because you're a wizard, and it's against their reflex to jump out of the way of it. But it did make it sound like you roll against them every single time, like you're rolling against their defense, rather than in 5e design, a spell is either an attack roll or an area of effect that needs a saving throw, an attack roll or a saving throw. Either you roll or they roll, but it's rarely both. This is my experience as a fighter. I am a bad fighter, but the complexity and speed of a fight adds in a lot of chaos as well. Cool. I'm liking it so far. I'm reminded that penalties are a big thing in 4e because 5e was the introduction of the advantage system, where they simplified a lot of the penalties, floating things, like when they mentioned, oh, you may be attacking from prone, so you have a penalty. That suddenly reminded me, oh yeah, they don't have disadvantage in this system. They just have, like, you get a -3 to your attack roll because you're prone, but you also have the Paladin's Blessing, so you've got a +2. And then the guy's behind cover, so you got a -4, and then you've got to work out all of that maths. Not quite as much as in 3, apparently, but we'll get to that. Attack rolls. Perhaps the most frequent die rolls you make in a D&D game are attack rolls. All attack rolls are described in this way: ability versus defense. For example, a wizard's fireball spell is an intelligence attack against target's reflex, written as intelligence versus reflex. A fighter's longsword attack is a strength attack against armor class. The ability score and the defense involved depend on the attack you're using. If the check result is higher than or equal to your opponent's defense, you hit and usually deal damage. The total of all the modifiers you add to an attack roll is your base attack bonus. You can find much more about attack rolls in Chapter 9. Example, Kira, an 8th level elf ranger with a dexterity of 17 and a +1 magic bow, shoots her bow at an ogre savage. Her base attack bonus is a +10, which includes... How is it a +10? Must be proficiency bonus. 3, 4, 6? Where's she getting an extra 6 from? I don't know how base attack bonus is calculated. I'll get there, I guess, eventually. Her base attack bonus is a +10, which includes... Oh, it's about to explain it. Read on! Which includes a +4 for 1/2 of her level. Oh, okay, that's a thing, is it? You get half of your level as your attack bonus. That's interesting. Oh, is that in lieu of a proficiency bonus? No, because she's got a proficiency bonus as well. I don't know. +4 from 1/2 of her level, +3 from dexterity modifier, +2 from bonus being proficient with the bow, and then the bow is +1 enhancement bonus. So you get a +2 from being proficient with it at 8th level. To see if she hits the ogre, she rolls a d20 and adds 10. If she rolls an 11, her check result is a 21. Since the ogre savage has an armor class of 19, she's scored a hit. Sidebar, attack. To make an attack roll, you roll 1d20 and add your following: 1/2 of your level, relevant ability score modifier, all of the modifiers. So much math in 4e combat. Was it as bad or worse than 5th edition? Third edition? I heard 3 and 3.5 got really mathy. Look at Rob, claims to be a DM, doesn't even know how base attack bonuses work. In an edition of the game he's never played. Skill checks. The knowledge and talents your character has learned are represented by skill checks. When you use a skill, you hope for a result higher than the DC of the task. For example, a cleric's heal check is a skill check against a specific DC. A rogue's stealth check is a skill check against a DC equal to the target's perception check result, an opposed check. If the check result is higher than or equal to the DC, you succeed. The total of the modifiers you add to a skill check is your base skill check bonus. You can find much more about skill checks in Chapter 5. Example, Alec, a 6th level human wizard with an intelligence of 18, is trying to identify a strange creature by using the Arcana skill. His base skill check is a plus 12, which includes 3 for half of his level, 4 for his intelligence modifier, and 5 for being trained in Arcana. I don't know why the 5. He's only 6th level. Why does he get plus 5 for being trained in it? I don't know. I guess we'll work out when we get to skills. To see if he identifies the creature, he rolls a d20 and adds 12. If he rolls a 7, his check result is a 19, and since the DC to identify the creature is 15, he realizes it's a Quickling. So, to make a skill check, roll a d20 and add the following: half your level, ability modifier, and any other relevant modifiers. Rob rolled a 4 on his subtlety check. Yep, not very subtle. Ability checks. Sometimes you're not making an attack or a skill check, but trying to accomplish a task that doesn't fall into either category. You make an ability check. Ability checks give the DM a way to adjudicate actions when an attack or skill check isn't appropriate. To make an ability check, you roll a d20, you add half your level, relevant modifier, all other modifiers. In other words, exactly the same as your attack roll or skill checks. Example, a strength check to break down a door is a d20 plus half your level plus your strength ability modifier. A 4th level character with a 16 strength makes a strength check by rolling a d20 plus 5, which is plus 2 from level and plus 3 from strength. Half your level, strength, yeah. If he rolls a 16, his result for that strength check is a 21. So you're always adding half your level to every check you make, apparently. I think that's in lieu of the proficiency bonus, which would go up, which would start way higher. No, way lower, but get way higher. So in D&D 5e, for the first 4 levels, you got a plus 2 proficiency bonus. Whereas in this, which when you get to level 4, it would be a 2 in both editions. Then you'd go to a 5 in 5e and it would become a 3, so you'd be below there. Then a 6 in both editions is the same, because you'd have a plus 3 in both. 7, you'd have a plus 3 in both. 8, however, you'd still have a plus 3 in 5e, but you'd go up to a plus 4 in 4e. And then from that point on, 4 has outweighed 5. From level 8 onwards, your proficiency bonus equivalent is more, yeah. What a nerd. Nerd doing maths. Nerdy maths. Sidebar, actions and combat. Combat encounters are played out in rounds. Each round represents about 6 seconds in the game world, regardless of how long it takes to play out the round. Combat starts with initiative checks to determine the order of play for the entire battle. There are 4 types of actions you can take in any round. Standard actions, move actions, minor actions, free actions. Interesting. They call them standard actions, move actions, minor actions, and free actions. So minor actions is bonus actions or equivalent. Standard action is just your action, which I've always thought was a bit weird that they call them action and bonus action, because bonus action makes it sound like, just from the wording alone, that you've got an action and then you can do another action. And I'm finding that with the Tales of the Misfits a lot. I ask the ladies, what do you want to do as a bonus action? And they're like, oh, I want to stab him, or I want to move, or I want to do that. It's like, no. You can only do a wee tiny little thing as your bonus action, and only if you have a thing that specifically says you can do it as a bonus action. I feel like calling them minor actions makes more sense. And calling it a standard action differentiates from action a little bit easier. You got a standard action, you got a minor action. You got a move, and you got a response or a reaction. And then free actions. Gaining levels. As you adventure and gain experience, you advance in levels. Gaining a level, also called leveling or leveling up, is one of the biggest rewards you'll receive for your success in the game. Your character improves in several ways each time you go up a level. Each time you overcome a non-combat encounter, defeat monsters, or complete a quest, your Dungeon Master rewards you with experience points. Blech. When you earn enough experience points, you reach a new level. For more about rewards, see Chapter 8. The character advancement table shows the total XP you need to reach each level and the abilities and other benefits you gain with each new level. Step by step, referring to the character advancement table, and follow these steps when your character gains a level. At most levels, you gain access to a new power or a new feat. Refer to your class description in Chapter 4 for the full listing of the powers available to you, and Chapter 6 for the complete list of feats. The game assumes you've been learning these powers in your spare time, studying musty tomes and practicing complicated series of maneuvers. In game terms, though, as soon as you gain a level, you can immediately use your new powers and feats. Immediately use your new powers and feats. Pretty sure it's like half the level base and more if you know the skill, and we'll get there. We thought maths wouldn't be useful after school. Bonus action. A wee little thing. A wee action. That sounds like you're taking a leak, though. I'm just going to take the wee action. Primary action and secondary action. No, because secondary makes it sound like it's as big as the first. It just happens second. And you can do your bonus action first. And so calling them secondary action would lead to even more confusion. Like, I can't do my secondary action because I haven't done my primary action yet. One of the things I didn't like about 4E was the XP leveling system. I hate XP leveling. Sucks. There's so much extra work for the Dungeon Master. It says you get experience for non-combat encounters. That means the DM has to decide how much was that roleplay worth. What it explained when it went into roleplay, what non-combat encounters are. It said like you're doing exploration. If you are searching for a trapdoor, if you're searching for a trapdoor, that's a non-combat encounter. As soon as you speak to somebody, it said. As soon as you... I can't remember the exact wording, but it said something like, as soon as you speak to somebody and the DM responds in character, that's a non-combat encounter. So every time you're socially role-playing, the DM has to go, how many XP was that worth? What kind of DM wants to do that? Main action and add-on action? Add-on action, again, just sounds like bonus. Sounds like it's the same size as your regular action. Tiny action, small action, little action, minor action. I'm fine with minor action. I think it's a good word for it. Or just give them 3 to 4 action points, and actions cost between 1 and 4 points, including movement. Yes, that's another way that a lot of systems get around it. Starry Dragon, it's more video gamey. I'm surprised 4E didn't do it, to be honest, without how everybody talks about video games. There is a new system that's being play tested at the moment on Kickstarter, I think, that a lot of my D&D friends are advertising. It's called DC20. A lot of people are talking about how it's going to be a big thing, and it's like solving a lot of the problems of Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And one of the ways that DC20 seems to do it is through action points, much like it is in like Divinity, Original Sin and stuff. You have a certain number of action points, more because of your class or your race or your level or your feats or whatever. You've got a certain number of action points, and it's like, if you want to make an attack, that's an action point. If you want to cast a spell, that's 2 action points. If you want to move, that's an action point. If you want to dodge, that's an action point. If you want to pick a lock, that's 4 action points or whatever. And each action is just however many action points, and then you can just be like, oh, so I'm going to attack 4 times because I got 4 action points and I'm already next to the guy. Or if I'm not next to the guy, I use 1 action point to move up, and then I can attack 3 times. That's a way that I quite like, and it is a way that I've thought about doing my system as well. Like when I eventually make a tabletop role-playing game, I might do it that way. But it also comes with other issues. I don't want it to feel video gamey. I'm not sure. I might be interested in seeing DC20 and how they do it when it's when the Kickstarter's finally finished. I might get a copy of DC20 and see how they do it, and maybe play it or something and see if I like it. You just get blanket XP per session, so you know milestone. Yeah. No leveling until the start of the. No leveling, just start at the level you want and finish the game. Doing 1 to 4 shots. Yeah. I was so confused by the ads for DC20. Was like, is this the new Wizards of the Coast content and they have changed the name? No, it's something else, just with a very similar branding. Was like, why? Yeah, it is a bit like they're trying to. I think they're leaning into that confusion. I think that's why it's gotten so much popularity, is because they're leaning into the this is the year where the new D&D stuff comes out, so I'm going to kind of use very similar branding and get people to pay attention to my stuff. I'm pretty sure that's what they're going with. I was just faked the XP, not the best solution, but it works, especially when the players don't know what the XP value are. Yeah, it makes sense as well. You've also, if you're doing XP, you've also got to think like, they had a non-combat encounter, but Barry took most of the talking, and Sam didn't say a damn thing during that combat encounter. He was engaged. He wasn't like on his phone, but he didn't actually. His character didn't contribute in any way. Do I give them all XP for that combat encounter? That talking non-combat encounter? Likewise, in a combat, you go, okay, well, Joey annihilated the monster with 300 points of smite damage and sneak attack and a crit on the first turn, and so nobody else got a chance to actually weigh in on the fight. By the wizard's turn in the last in initiative order, everybody was dead, and so he didn't actually do anything in the fight. Do I still give the wizard the same amount of XP? XP is just nothing but hassle. I would have thought the great opportunity to promote non-D20 systems and permanently steal players away. Maybe. The move action was better in 4E in my opinion. We will get there eventually. Session design when using XP tracking is a lot harder to keep the pacing from week to week and month to month sessions. Yep. You got the question of if somebody didn't make it to today's session and we played without them and I was NPCing their character, does their character still level up with the rest of you? Am I punishing players that can't make it every week because they've got kids or whatever? This is why you share blanket experience for everyone and divide it evenly. Yeah. It sounds like something for DMs who like spreadsheets and solitaire. I love spreadsheets and solitaire. I hate XP. I tried it for the first 6 months of my home games when I first started DMing, and I did literally have spreadsheets for every table session, and I wrote the 4 players in the game that I was running. I wrote the 4 players, and I wrote I just put a new row on the table for everything that they did. They fought this thing. They fought that many goblins. They fought this. They found this book. Because I suddenly started going, it can't be just combat. They found this important book and they took it to the library where they encountered the next part of the quest. And then I had to be like, I guess I'll give them XP for that. And I started dividing up Grid was the one who found the book, but Mal suggested to take it to the library. And it took I tried it for 6 months trying it that way, and then I realized, what the fuck am I doing? Why would I do it this way? This is so much extra work. I don't need to do this. XP is very, very, very video gamey. And video gamey is where it should belong. You can't really do milestone level. You could. In a story like Baldur's Gate, you can absolutely do milestone leveling up. You can just be like, no, you don't get benefits for grinding in this video game. Once you speak to this NPC and finish that quest, you level up. Once you get to the end of Act 2, you level up again. Once you enter this temple that triggers Act 3, you level up or whatever. You could do milestone. But XP is the realm of video game because video games can calculate and keep a track of all of the experience of a party easily. Plus, if you're playing something like Baldur's Gate, you are playing as the whole party, so it doesn't really matter if one character has leveled up before one of the others. First kill was 5 XP, second kill was 2 XP. Jesus. That's insane. I sort of don't like that you get stuff all in a whoosh. Like you're doing stuff, it should be sort of in bits and pieces. That's something I've been something I've been combating for a while in Dungeons and Dragons design. Is you level up, you get access to 3rd level spells, you can now attack twice, your proficiency bonus goes up, blah blah blah. And I'm that happens on a long rest? You just wake up and you've got all this abilities? When I first started playing, I've kind of grandfathered one of my games into continuing with that system because they're like level 12 now and they've always been that way. It's the one game that I've been running since day one, and so I started that way, and even back then it bothered me, and so I needed an excuse as to why that's happening, and so that's where the idea of the prophetic dreams came from. Whenever a character levels up and gains some new ability overnight, it's because the gods or some higher power has ordained to give them this ability. And so it makes sense. Magically, they are being enhanced and imbued with the power to cast these spells now. And I used to write prophetic dreams for every one of the characters based on the new abilities they were taking. So I would ask them, what spell are you taking at this level? And then I would bake that spell into their dream. And so they wake up the next morning knowing that spell now. Which is a lot of work, but a lot of fun story moments because of it. and then I started also noticing with that game that they were leveling up, and then they were doing a shit ton of stuff the next day, like story things, and they just never had downtime. So they'd be onto the next thing, onto the next thing, onto the next thing, and so they'd level up again. It's only like 3 days after in game. It's only like 3 days after the last time you leveled up, and they go again and again and again. But they're doing like amazing story progression, and so they're leveling up. And then we look back on what have you achieved in game story time, and it's been like 2 months, and you've got like 8 levels. Why have you lived 30 years of your life to this point to get to level 1, and then suddenly within a month you're a level 8? This makes no sense. So I had to then come up with like in-game story reasons for that. Like, oh, you're the prophesied ones, and you were waiting until you were adult age, and then bam, suddenly the prophecy is underway now, and so the gods have ordained that all things must happen at once. And that's when I introduced into any new games that started. As I say, like the ones that were already continuing, I kind of grandfathered them in on the same process that I was already running with them. But any new games have this thing that I use with Twitch Tales, where if you are leveling up to a certain level, you must take that many levels of that many days of downtime to force you to be like, look, you're not leveling 8 times in a month. The downtime is the thing that's really forcing the in-game passage of time. Anyway, that's kind of the reason for that. Is that I was also feeling like it's weird that you get all of these new abilities all at once. And so I go, if you're getting level 8 abilities, you've got 8 days to have been acquiring those abilities. It makes a little bit more sense for me. But it would be interesting if a gaming system had way more levels way more frequently and gave you way less each level. So like if the level cap was not 20 but instead like 100, but instead of each level you get new HP, a new spell, new proficiency, new language, new ASI, whatever. Maybe each level you get just one of those things, and you choose every time you level up. Do you want your HP to go up? Okay, that's all you got this level. But you're going to level up again very quickly, like at the end of the session. That would be an interesting way of doing it, actually. To be like, this is a system where you go from 1 to 100, and at the end of every level you level up. But every time you level up, you only pick one minor thing that changes. And so you're incrementally, slowly increasing your character, getting used to the one thing that you took at the end of the last session. In the next table session, you start off, oh, I've got a +1 to my ability now, actually, because I took that at the end of the last session. I do like RPGs. There's a lot of RPGs that do that, where it's like at the end of each table session, you have like a debrief, and you answer questions. Did you save anybody from a fate worse than death? Did you solve one of your bonds or flaws? Did you this? Did you that? Did the other? And if you say yes to these, you gain an XP point. And once you hit 6 XP or whatever, you get to choose from your list of things to increase or improve. Gloomhaven was a card game, board game that's like that as well, where you get to choose. Oh, I'm gonna level up, and I'm going to choose what my increase is going to be. I like games that do that sort of thing. Maybe you make you train a new spell daily for a certain number of days in order to gain it. It wouldn't hurt to reduce the downtime. I see the encounters they do between levels and is part of leveling up. So say they have 2 to 3 action heavy days. They need a further 10 days to get to level 13. So you need a total number of days between levels. That's a good way of doing it, Hannah. Actually, yeah. To be like, hey, has it been at least that many days since you last leveled up? Yes, you have enough experience to level up, but it's only been 3 days since you last leveled up, so you have to have another 10 days of downtime. I quite like that. That's a pretty neat way of doing it, Hannah. What does that guarantee? It guarantees that to go from level 1 to 20, you are taking 210 days. It guarantees that no one is leveling to 20 before 210 days have passed since the start of the campaign, which is pretty good. It's like you've gone an entire year. It's still way under. Well, it's well under a year. It's 2/3 of a year. Don't suggest that, Rob. I've been alpha testing a D20 system that's 100 discrete levels, 1 per session, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare? What's a nightmare about it, Southern Skies? I was just spitballing, so I'd like your feedback if you've actually been alpha testing something. Is it just the fact that you can't remember what you took at each level? How much do you get at each level? My point is I would only do 100 discrete levels, one per session, if each level up was like one very small thing that changed. Like you get to increase one of your 6 ability scores by 1 point, or you get to increase your health by a d4, or you get to increase your attack modifier by a +1, or you get 1 extra spell slot or something like that. Like very, very, very small incremental decisions. That's how I would imagine it. That's what Through the Breach does, doesn't it? Maybe. I don't really remember how leveling works in Through the Breach. Do you get to remove from your deck like shitty cards and put more good cards in? I know that's how Gloomhaven works. Each class has a table of 100 level ups, and the stat cap is 40. If I was to do this way, I would not have a table. I would make it a choice each level. Like, I'd maybe have a table of like 10 things. Like between levels 1 and 10, these are the things you can choose to increase. Between 10 and 20, these are the things you can choose to increase. Fancy says you can boost one thing that you've actually used. Yeah, maybe, because that's something I really like about Call of Cthulhu, is that at the end of the session, when in your like debrief at the end of the session, you think, which is one of my skills that I failed at, but I used it, but I failed at it, and then you can increase that stat a little bit by 1 point, and because it's a percentage-based system, increasing by 1 isn't quite as swingy as it would be in D&D. But you can go, I've got an extra +1 to that skill now, because I failed at it and I learned from my mistakes. And I really like systems where you learn from your mistakes, i.e. you get experience every time you fail. I'm in a mission-based game. I'm always available, so I'm level 6, and everyone else who's in and out is 4 to 5. Yeah, that sucks. DM even tried to hold me back a little, told me I was so close to level before game night, missed it by 100 experience. You can work towards the next level if you want to gain it, i.e. you see what you would take next level and you have to include practice for it before you can take it. That's another way of doing it. It's a little bit more work for the DM to keep a track of, I think, but like, I suppose once you've implemented it into your games and said that that's a rule, it's not work for the DM because it's up to the players. So when you level up to 5, your homework is look at what you want to take at level 6 and start working on that stuff in character, in roleplay. Because if we get to the point where I say you have enough level to level 6 and you tell me, excellent, I'm going to take Fireball, and you haven't done anything towards studying the spell Fireball, the DM can be like, no, you don't have Fireball because you haven't worked on it at all. And so you have to tell them, you have to actively include in your roleplay and action and adventure how you are going to be working on the next thing that you're going to be taking at level 6, so that when you get to level 6, the DM says, right, you're level 6, and then the players can say, excellent, I finally have access to that thing that I've been working on. Kind of like I'm doing with you in Apis, in the Twitch Tales game, because I know that at a later level, as a Horizon Walker, you have access to certain teleportation magics, and so I'm having you, from time to time, work on trying to teleport, and you guys are rolling a 1 in 100 chance of teleporting successfully, so that when you are eventually at the level where you can get teleport, it makes a little more sense that you've got access to that. So that sort of thing I think is a good way of doing it. Ben would be unstoppable in a system that increases abilities after a failure. The point is, it wouldn't increase once it gets to a point where it's balanced out. Yeah, eventually all the learning from failure starts to cause successes, and then you're no longer learning from it. And then there's WHFRP, where it's careers and advancement in that career unless you pretty much make the opportunity to move on to the next career. I don't know that one. I know that in Dungeon World? In Dungeon World, you max out at level 10, and then you can retire your character. And then after you've retired your character, you can bring in a new character at level 1, but you can retain one of the abilities from your level 10 character, so that you're like the apprentice of the previous character. And then you continue on through to level 10 if you go that far. Speaking of which, I'm meant to be going into a Dungeon World game with my friends now. Let me just double check what time that's meant to start. I think it's past, so I probably should stop now and go and get some food or something. Oh, bummer. Yeah, 20 minutes. Let's get to the end of this chapter, and then I'll wrap it up, and we'll start here next time. I'm enjoying reading the book though. There's some differences, some sames. Alright, gaining levels, blah blah blah, experience points, character advancements, yada yada. Step by step, refer to the character advancement table and follow these steps when your character gains a level. At most levels, you gain access to a new power or new feat. Refer to your class description in Chapter 4 for the full listing of the powers available to you, and see Chapter 6 for the complete list of feats. The game assumes that you've been learning these powers in your spare time, studying musty tomes, or practicing a complicated set of maneuvers. In game terms, though, as soon as you gain a level, you can immediately use your new powers and feats. Number 1, ability scores. Check the ability scores column to see if you can improve your ability scores. If you can, choose the abilities you want to increase. At 4th, 8th, 14th, 18th, 24th, and 28th level... Jesus, how many levels are there in this game? You increase 2 ability scores by 1, and you can't take both increases in the same score. Interesting, you can't take both increases in the same score. And at 11th and 21st, you increase each of your ability scores by 1. That's cool. So there's a level where you just like, bam, everything gets a little bit better. 4th, 8th, 11th, 14th, 18th, 21st, 24th, 28th. Fascinating. If you increase an ability score to an even number, your ability score modifier goes up, and that change affects powers, skills, and defenses that rely on that ability score. Make a note of that fact, but don't change any numbers just yet. Level modifier. If your new level is an even number, everything that's based on 1/2 of your level becomes better. Your attacks, defenses, initiative, skill checks, and ability checks. In combination with any increased ability modifiers, you now have the information you need to increase those numbers. Now go through your character sheet and note those increases. Paragon and Epic. If you just reached 11th or 21st level, you have some exciting decisions to make. You can choose a Paragon path or an Epic destiny. I don't think I've ever heard of Paragon path before. I've heard of the Epic levels, both of which are described in Chapter 4. Make that choice and make note of the new power or feature that you gain. Hit points. Check your class description in Chapter 4 to see how many hit points you gain with your new level. Add those to your total. If you increased your con score, increase your hit points by 1, as if you had your new con score when you were at first level. Also, if you increase your con score to an even number, increase your new number of healing surges by 1. Class features. When you check your class description for hit points, also check your class features to see if any of your powers or other abilities improve with level. For example, the Rogue Sneak Attack class feature improves at 11th and 21st levels. Feats. Oh, Sneak Attack only improves at 11th and 21st. Interesting. Feats. Check the powers and features column of the character advancement table to see if you learn any new feats. You learn 1 feat at first level, 1 new feat at every even numbered level after that, plus 1 new feat at 11th and 21st levels. I've just had an idea, completely regardless of anything that I'm reading, unrelated to anything, but it's an idea for a monster, so I need to write it down before I forget it. Where should I write it? I'll write it in here. That's stuff about this. Interesting. And then okay. We're back. Class description for hit points. Rogue Sneak Attack goes up at 11th and 21st. Feats. Check the powers and features column of the character advancement table to see if you learn any new feats. You learn 1 feat at first level, 1 new feat at every even numbered level after that. So that's cool. So you learn a feat at first, so you start with a feat. You learn a feat at first level. No, that's the level you start with, I suppose. So you start with 1 at first level. You get another one at second level, and another one at 4th, 6th, 8th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, 22. She's going to be fucking drowning in feet. Be a centipede by the end of it. If you increased an ability score, you might meet the prerequisites for some feats you didn't qualify for before. The feats known column on the character advancement table enables you to double check at every level to be sure you have the number of feats that you're entitled to. Number 7 on the gaining level step by step. Powers. At most levels, you gain access to a new power. You can take each power only once. You can't choose the same power multiple times. Refer to your class description in Chapter 4 for a full listing of the powers available to you. You have at-will attack powers. At first level, choose 2 at-will attack powers from the list in your class description. You don't automatically learn new at-will powers as you advance, but as you gain levels, you can choose to retrain and replace an at-will power you have with one that you want to take. Encounter attack powers. At first level, select 1 power from the list of first level encounter attack powers in your class description. At 3rd and 7th, you learn a new encounter power of your level or lower. Blah, blah, blah. This is just very mathy, just specifying the different levels where you get stuff, which we'll go over again once we go to the tables for each of the classes. So I'm just going to kind of skip ahead a bit. Daily attack powers. At first level, choose a power from the list of blah, blah, blah. At 20th, you learn a new daily, blah, blah, blah. Utility powers. At 2nd level, you choose utility power, blah, blah, blah. We'll go over all of this again when we're actually going through individual classes. Retraining. Sometimes you make decisions when you create or advance your character that you later regret. Perhaps a power you chose isn't working with your character concept, or a feat never comes into play the way you anticipated it would. Fortunately, in such a case, level advancement isn't only a time to learn new powers, it's also an opportunity to change some of those decisions. Every time you gain a level, you can retrain your character. Change 1 feat, power, or skill selection you made previously. You can make only 1 change each level. When your class table tells you to replace a power you know with a different power of a higher level, that doesn't count as retraining. You can still retrain an additional feat, power, or skill as normal. Feat. You can replace a feat with another feat. You must meet the prerequisites of the new feat. You can't replace a feat if it's a prerequisite for any other attribute that you have. Blah, blah, blah. Power. You can replace a power with another power of the same type. At-will attack, encounter attack, daily attack, utility. Same level or lower. Blah, blah, blah. Skill. You can replace a trained skill with another trained skill. Blah, blah, blah. The 3 tiers. The 30 levels of your career, so you can get to level 30, I guess. The 30 levels of your career are divided into 3 tiers. Heroic, which is 1st through 10th, Paragon, which is 11th through 20th, and Epic, 21st through 30th. When you leave one tier and cross the threshold into a new one, you experience some major increases in power. At the same time, the threats you face in a higher tier are much more lethal. In the Heroic tier, your character is already a hero, set apart from the common people by your natural talents, learned skills, and some hint of a greater destiny that lies before you. Your capabilities are largely determined by your choice of character class, and to a lesser extent by your race. You move around on foot, or at a relatively mundane mount such as a horse. In combat, you might make mighty leaps or incredible climbs, but you're still basically earthbound. The fate of a village might hang on the success or failure of your adventures, to say nothing of the risk to your own life. You navigate dangerous terrain and explore haunted crypts, where you can expect to fight sneaky goblins, savage orcs, ferocious wolves, giant spiders, evil cultists, and bloodthirsty ghouls. If you face a dragon, it's a young one still searching for its lair, one that has not yet found its place in the world. One, in other words, that is much like you. Ooh, poetic. So it seems like the 3 tiers of 4E D&D is replaced by the 4 tiers of 5th edition, 5th edition, and the 4 tiers of 5th edition are basically in 5s. I don't know why. It's in 4, 6, 6, and then 4 again. That makes no sense to me. It must be something based on how people tend to play the game and trying to encourage them into different tiers at earlier levels before they get bored and stop playing. I don't know. I don't understand. But yeah, they go 4, 6, 6, 4. And I also don't know why the proficiency bonus isn't the same then, because the proficiency bonus goes up every 4 levels, and there are 5 tiers of proficiency bonus. So why not make the proficiency bonus applicable straight to a tier of gameplay? So 1 to 4, you're kind of well known in the area. Maybe you're like a local folk hero. You can't really do much, and you're still at risk from like goblins. Then as soon as your proficiency goes up to a 3, now you're level 5. From 5 to 8, you're a definite local hero. People in the town that you're from and the surrounding towns, they know about you, and you're capable of holding your own against like an entire camp of goblins. And then from level 9 to 12, blah blah blah. Like they could do it as just 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, up to the point where you're 17, 18, 19, 20, you are like epic demigod level hero. But that's not how they do it, and I don't understand why. It's even weirder that from level 1 to 10 in 4th edition, you are a hero. You're a level 1 hero or a level 10 hero. Like, those are not the same category. You are not in the same tier. Why? Like, there's only 2 tiers between 1 and 20. That's crazy. In the German rule system, that Dark Eye 4.1, to increase your skills, there are optional rules on how you learn the skills, like if you are taught by someone or if you're teaching yourself. So you need to spend this much time per week and this much gold to do it. That's cool. Dungeon World, I just game mastered for the first time and used that system. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it is a pretty cool system. I'm liking Dungeon World. I'm playing a game with a friend of mine just off stream in like 10 minutes. I'm not running it, thankfully. Alright, that was the Heroic tier. The Paragon tier. In the Paragon tier, your character is a shining example of heroism, set well apart from the masses. Your class still largely determines your capabilities. In addition, you gain extra abilities in your speciality, the Paragon Path. When you reach 11th level, you choose a Path of Specialization, a course that defines who you are within a certain narrow range of criteria. You are able to travel more quickly from place to place, perhaps on a hippogriff mount or using a spell to grant your flight. In combat, you might even fly or teleport short distances. Death becomes a surmountable obstacle, and the face of a nation or even the world might hang in the balance as you undertake momentous quests. You navigate uncharted regions and explore long-forgotten dungeons, where you can expect to fight sneaky drow, savage giants, ferocious hydras, fearless golems, rampaging barbarian hordes, bloodthirsty vampires, and crafty mind flayers. When you face a dungeon, when you face a dragon, it is a powerful adult who has established a lair and found its place in the world. Again, much like you. Haha, poetic. And finally, in the Epic tier, your character's capabilities are truly superheroic. Your class still determines most of your abilities, but your most dramatic powers come from your choice of epic destiny, which you select at 21st level. You travel across nations in the blink of an eye, and your whole party might take to the air in combat. The success and failure of adventures have been far-reaching consequences, possibly determine the fate of millions in this world and even planes beyond. You navigate otherworldly realms and explore never-before-seen caverns of wonder, where you can expect to battle savage pit fiends, ferocious Tarask, sinister sorrow-sworn death lords, bloodthirsty lich archmages, and even demon princes. The dragons you encounter are now ancient worms of truly earth-shaking power, whose sleep troubles kingdoms and whose waking threatens the world. Much like your own. It doesn't say that. And there's the character advancement table, which looks quite complicated. Did you see that? There you go. It goes from 1st through to 30th level. It tells you the XP needed to get to that level, which is not linear. It says ability score, C race, and then +1 to 2, +1 to 2, +1 to all, +1 to 2, and so on. It goes powers and features. It tells you at 0th level, at 1st level, it says you gain your class features, your racial traits, and a feat. You train your starting skills. You gain 2 at will powers, 1 daily power, and 1 encounter power. At 2nd level, you gain 1 more utility power and another feat. At 3rd level, you get an encounter and an attack power. At 4th level, you gain another feat. At 5th level, an attack power and a daily power, and so on and so on and so on. It also has a separate table for feats known. It's 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10. So it goes up mostly in every other level, but there's occasionally an extra feat thrown in there as well. And then finally, it gives you a column of total powers known, at will, encounter, daily, and utility. And it just breaks them down by number. At 1st level, you got 2110, 2110, then 2111, then 2211, and so on, all the way to 2447 at 30th level. 30th level, by the way, 1 million XP. You need 1 million XP to get to 30th level. And 175,000 of that is just to go from 29th to 30th. If you had 175,000 XP given to you in one go, it could take you from 0 to 21 or from 29 to 30. Alrighty, we have not reached the end of chapter 2. Oh, we're so close though. I've still got time. I've got 6 minutes to read 2 pages. Let's go. Oh, it's just a character sheet. Character sheet. Last 2 pages of chapter 2. You can record information about your character any way you'd like, but most players prefer to use a character sheet. You can find a blank character sheet at the end of this book. Reproduced here at half size is an example of a typical character sheet. The various sections are keyed with numbers that correspond to the following information. Character name, your level, class, paragon, epic, or destiny, your total XP so far, your race and your size, your age, your gender, your height and your weight, your alignment, your deity, your adventuring company and other affiliations, your initiative modifier, your defenses modifier, where you record your armor class, your fortitude defense, your reflex defense, and your will defense, which are static numbers that are based on your static numbers instead of a reflex save. It's your reflex defense, where it's based on what your dexterity and half your level and 10. And then that's just the base of, like, it's kind of like an AC. So if somebody hits you with a fireball and instead of making a dexterity saving throw, they just have to hit your reflex defense. Which I don't mind. I think it's actually an okay way of doing things. Blah blah blah. Then your speed, then your ability scores, then any senses you have like passive perception and insight modifiers. Attack workspace. Use this space to determine your attack bonuses with most frequent attacks. That makes sense. You got a space for hit points. You got a space for second wind. Once per encounter, you can spend a healing surge as a standard action. Note any temporary hit points in the space provided. So you've got a special section for second wind because it's not just fighters that can do it. It's everyone. You got a section for noting down a death saving throw failures. Action points. Note any action points you've earned here. We haven't worked out action points yet, but it says see page 286. So we'll get there eventually. Race features. Anywhere to work out your damage. A space to working out basic attacks and your skills. A space for working out your class, path, or destiny features. A space for noting down your languages and your feats and your power index. What is a power index? Use this portion of the sheet to list the powers that you know, organised by whether they're attack powers or utility powers. Okay, that makes sense. And then magic item index, so your inventory. A section for your character illustration. A section for your character details, session and campaign notes. How big is that? So little. And then a section for other equipment, any rituals you know, and coins and other wealth. And that's the character sheet. Pretty simple. And that concludes Chapter 2. We are 32 pages into the 317-page book, so it might take a while for us to get through this book. Lots of Robert Reads, perhaps, but I am enjoying it so far. We're going to dive next time into Chapter 3, the fantasy races of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to compare them to 5th edition and see how the dwarves are in 4th edition, and what is an Eladrin compared to the 5th. Thank you for joining me for Robert Reads, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Hi there. If this is the first video you've watched of my stuff, check out more videos over here. I do D&D related content all the time.